Chapter 36:12. Before Yi Xian could recover from his shock, Grandpa Mo had already rushed out of the villa. He soared into the air and roared, "Fellow Taoists, don't panic. If you trust this old man, quickly gather here. Move quickly. Young Patriarch Sha Baofeng, I have something to say to everyone." At this moment, Yi Xian just happened to be following behind him and also rushed out of the villa. When he heard this, he immediately rolled his eyes. This was because he instantly understood Grandpa Mo's meaning. This old fellow was a good-for-nothing. He actually wanted to trick the nearly 10,000 members of the imperial family out of the emperor's prison. In fact, this was the best way to deal with it. If they were to tell the truth, they might not be able to make a decision immediately. As for the mechanical core, it had suddenly lost its power over the emperor's prison. No one knew how long it had been, whether it was Yi Xian or Grandpa Mo. They dared to bet. The safest way was to use Sha Baofeng's identity as the young patriarch of the Tianji clan to trick all of them out of the emperor's prison. Even if these fellows immediately understood everything after leaving the emperor's prison, they would have already come out by then. There was no way they could go back even if they wanted to. Even if the servility in their bones was deeply engraved into their bones, they could only go with the flow and follow the army out. This was a drastic measure. Regardless of whether they accepted it or not, they would force these fellows to rebel together. As expected of an old fox, his temperament was resolute and his methods were ruthless. Even Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh. Soon as Grandpa Mo's voice fell, the figures who had just walked out of the villas on the vast and boundless fertile plains, who were looking up at the sky in shock, all soared into the air one after another. They gathered in the direction of Yi Xian and Grandpa Mo. They came over. There were originally hundreds of 10-man patrol teams on the fertile plains. Just now, all the energy shields of the cages had disappeared. These guards were all extremely flustered and had no idea what to do. At this moment, they raised their heads and saw that young Patriarch Sha Baofeng had appeared. He didn't seem to be anxious. Instead, he stood with his hands behind his back. It floated in the air, quietly waiting for the prisoners around the plains to gather. The patrolling guards immediately calmed down. Even if they didn't understand, they couldn't be nosy. If there was really a problem, wasn't the young patriarch still here? Even if the sky collapsed, there would be someone tall to hold it up. The 10 guards following behind Yi Xian all had faces full of bewilderment and even a little fear. However, after exchanging glances with each other, they didn't say anything in the end. They obediently rose into the air and stood behind Yi Xian with their hands folded. They stood there respectfully, waiting for orders. In fact, even if these prison guards and patrolling guards wanted to do something, they didn't have the guts to do so at this moment. There were only a total of over 1,000 people, and there were nearly 10,000 hostages from various races gathered around them. All of their cultivations were above theirs, so they could only tuck their tails between their legs and behave themselves. Soon, thousands of figures gathered in the surrounding void. The rest were also on their way, and their figures could be seen from afar. It could be confirmed that all the hostages had basically arrived. At this time, no one would still stay in the villa in the detention center. No matter what happened, whether it was an unforeseen event or for other reasons, they had to come and take a look. Even if it was just to take a stroll and get some fresh air, it was still good. Due to the urgency of time, Grandpa Mo looked around and saw that most of the people had already gathered around, and a small number of them were about to arrive. He didn't dare to delay any longer. Otherwise, if the mechanical core suddenly recovered its power at this time, he would be caught unprepared. Therefore, Grandpa Mo immediately turned his head and gave Yi Xian a look. The latter nodded, stepped out, and stepped in front of Grandpa Mo. With his hands behind his back, he still had the posture of the young patriarch of the Tianji clan. He coughed twice to clear his throat, and at the same time signaled the experts of various races to stop their private discussions. Then he patted his chest and said loudly, "Let me introduce myself. I am Sha Baofeng, the current young patriarch of the Tianji clan. I have just received my title." This matter had long been known in the imperial prison, so the hostages of the various races didn't have much of a reaction. Instead, they were all puzzled. Their gazes converged on Yi Xian's face, quietly waiting for him to continue. "A new broom sweeps clean. You should have heard of this, right? Today, this young patriarch came to the imperial prison to burn the first fire. Just as Yi Xian finished speaking, the faces of many of the imperial family members that had gathered around him darkened. There were even cold snorts coming out from their noses. They had been sullenly held in the imperial prison for nearly 10,000 years. But it wasn't just because they were afraid of the Heavenly Legacy clan. One of them, these existences were more concerned with the survival of the entire race. Now, a mere young patriarch of the Tianji clan had actually come to the imperial prison after taking up his new position. He wanted to act like a tyrant and sweeps clean. This was truly laughable. There was an uproar in the crowd, and there were even some who mocked and ridiculed him. Some people didn't give him any face at all. They curled their lips and turned around, wanting to leave and return to the Villa Cave residence where they were being held. It was also at this moment that Yi Xian's next words were unhurriedly said. Therefore, this young patriarch has decided to grant amnesty to the entire world. All hostages of the various races detained in the imperial prison will immediately scram. The Tianji clan doesn't raise idle people. Why are you freeloading here and not working? Boom! The surrounding crowd instantly went into an uproar. Those fellows who were about to leave all stopped in their tracks and turned around to look at Yi Xian. Their faces were filled with astonishment, and they couldn't even close their mouths. At this moment, apart from Yi Xian himself and Grandpa Mo, everyone, including the patrols and guards in the imperial prison, wondered if there was something wrong with their ears. They actually heard such words from the young patriarch's mouth. Grant amnesty to the entire world? The Tianji clan doesn't raise idle people? All hostages of the various races in the imperial prison will immediately scram? Good heavens, this was the worst joke in history. With this thought, the surrounding hostages of the various races reacted even more strongly than before. Some of them even began to curse in disdain. They were certain that this newly appointed young patriarch of the Tianji clan was purely here to make fun of them. They all turned around and prepared to leave. Old Master Mo, however, raised his arm and shouted at this moment. His gaze swept through the crowd, and he looked at the dozen or so past imperial uncles of the demons, as well as a small number of hostages who were closer to him. He said loudly, "The young master has spoken. Don't you see that the energy barriers of all the cages have disappeared?" Chapter 36:13. This kind of thing was too inconceivable, so they naturally needed a leader. And now, seeing that all the groundwork had been laid, Grand Elder Mo immediately jumped out of his own accord and became the leader. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned and shot toward the exit of the imperial prison. The other 10 or so imperial uncles immediately followed. Grand Elder Mo was their senior, the most senior among the imperial uncles of the imperial uncles. No matter what he helped, the others would definitely support him. Immediately after, the 10 or so people who were on good terms with Grand Elder Mo also followed behind without hesitation, charging toward the exit within sight. As a result, the crowd immediately became restless again. It was one thing for no one to leave, but now that someone had already taken the lead and rushed to the exit, this was another matter altogether. It could be said that the moment Grand Elder Mo turned around, everyone else's minds had already been shaken. Who would want to stay in this kind of place? Even if they were tricked with Grand Elder Mo in front of them, even someone as senior as him could bear it, so what couldn't the others bear? What if it really was a general amnesty? Wouldn't they regret it for the rest of their lives if they missed such a good opportunity just to avoid being tricked? Taking 10,000 steps back, if there really was something fishy going on, even if the Tianji clan shot the bird that stood out, they definitely wouldn't be blamed. If it wasn't this strange young clan leader in front of them, then it would be Grand Elder Mo and the others. It wouldn't even be their turn. Thinking like this, more people were shaken in an instant. Those fellows who were originally about to leave stopped in their tracks, then turned and followed. More and more people rushed toward the exit of the imperial prison. In the end, it completely formed a large group of nearly 10,000 people gathered together. They were all moving in the direction of the exit. The only difference was that some were fast and rushed to the front, while others were slow and had misgivings and just followed behind. This scene had long stunned the 1,000 patrolling guards on the ground. The 10 guards following behind Yi Xian were even more uneasy. They all looked at Yi Xian with pitiful eyes, wanting to say something, but didn't dare to make a sound. Seeing these 10 fellows standing in place without moving, Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. He scolded. "What are you still standing around for? This young master said that he wants to grant amnesty to the entire world, didn't you hear? Go and open the giant alloy door at the main exit. The 10 of them looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. Obviously, they didn't want to take the blame. Although Sha Baofeng was indeed the new young clan leader, what he was doing now was too strange, which had already aroused the suspicion of the 10 of them. If there really was a problem, they were the guards of the exit. Once the giant alloy door of the exit was opened, they would be the first ones to be punished. Since that's the case, then all of you can stay in this imperial prison and accompany it in its destruction. Yi Xian sneered. He immediately turned around and followed behind the crowd, rushing towards the exit. Mr. Mo was a peak level 9-star lord, so it wouldn't have been difficult for him to blow open the alloy gate with brute force. However, that would have alarmed Lu Biao's D in advance. However, if the 10 guards of the exit were unwilling to cooperate, he would have no choice but to do so. As he spoke, Yi Xian didn't even turn his head. With a wave of his hand, he activated the Super Death Light Bomb, which increased the size of the undying world in his body time and time again. After activating its self-detonation program, he allowed it to roll towards the fertile plains behind him. This Super Death Light Bomb was originally only made from the remains of Sha Baofeng's stronghold. Later on, Di Xiaofeng and the others' 8 large and small strongholds were added in. After that, Yi Xian continued to add in a few more things, even though they were all the remains of battleships and fortresses. However, these wreckages all had complete kinetic energy cabins, space oscillators, antimatter light energy generators, and the like. They were all piled up in a messy pile. Now, the size of the pile had reached a diameter of 500,000 meters, which was 1 or 2 times larger than the Void battlecruiser. Its size was absolutely terrifying. Its interior had also been modified by the Devouring system. In any case, it was just connecting important equipment such as the kinetic energy compartment and the antimatter light energy generator together, and detonating it crudely. Therefore, although it was large, the modification process was not complicated, and it took almost no effort to complete. Now that I've pardoned the world, there's no need for this emperor's prison to exist anymore. Both I and the chief will have to convince people with virtue in the future. After waving his hand to summon the Super Death Light Bomb, Yi Xian didn't even turn his head. He turned around and waved his hand again as he left, lightly saying, "This Super Death Light Bomb was created by combining the kinetic energy cabins, space oscillators and antimatter light energy generators of more than a dozen large strongholds. Now this Super Death Light Bomb was created by combining the kinetic energy cabins, space oscillators and antimatter light energy generators of more than a dozen large strongholds. It will explode in a quarter of an hour. Then the entire Emperor's prison will be blown up. You deserve to be praised for your vigilance. Since you've decided to die with the Emperor's prison, just stay. I'll make you heroes of the clan later." Whoosh! 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 Before Yi Xian could finish speaking, the sound of figures flashing through the air came from behind him. When they heard that the entire Emperor's prison was about to be blown up, the faces of the 10 guards turned green. They didn't hesitate and moved even faster than Yi Xian. In the blink of an eye, they passed by him and rushed to the front. "What lowly bones!" Yi Xian grinned, then shrugged his shoulders and muttered softly, "And they're a little stupid. Although this Super Death Light Bomb is terrifying, the entire Emperor's prison is so vast that it's like a huge planet. It's also a certain level of space within Tianji City, and it's one with the entire Tianji City. It's one body, so how could it be blown up so easily? At most, it'll blow up 70 to 80%. Before he could finish speaking, at the exit of the Emperor's prison, the 10 guards had already turned a corner and disappeared. Immediately after, just as Yi Xian arrived at the exit, the rumbling sound of machinery came from the opening of the giant alloy door in front of him. Turning around to look, there were only a few figures that could be seen on the vast fertile plains of the Emperor's prison behind him. However, outside the exit tunnel beside him, there was a large crowd of people entering the tunnel in an extremely orderly manner. Even the 1,000 patrolling guards of the Emperor's prison had all gathered around at this moment. They also saw the huge Super Death Light Bomb rolling into the depths of the fertile plains. At this moment, all of their faces were pale with fright. They followed behind the hostages of the royal family, hoping to leave as soon as possible. Chapter 36:14. Although it seemed like a long time had passed, In reality, not much time had passed. From the moment Yi Xian entered the imperial prison passageway until the giant alloy gate opened again, the group of hostages from the various races in the first universe, led by Grand Elder Mo, rushed out one after another. It had only been a little more than 10 minutes. At this moment, Yi Xian had already blended into the crowd and was quietly and slowly changing his appearance. All of this was done by the so-called young clan leader, Sha Baofeng. Moreover, the 10 guards who opened the giant alloy gate at the front of the passageway must have followed closely behind Grand Elder Mo and the others and rushed out first in the crowd. If nothing unexpected happened, this matter would be exposed very soon. At that time, the news of young clan leader Sha Baofeng betraying the clan would spread throughout the entire Tianji city. Not only would the Tianji continent in the core area receive the news, but the inner defense circle and the outer industrial circle would also receive the news. Although the entire Tianji City Star region would be thrown into chaos after the tens of thousands of hostages from the various races in the first universe rushed out, the main target of the Tianji race fleet and patrol forces would definitely be the traitorous young clan leader Sha Baofeng. At this time, if he still used this identity to wander around and swindle others, he would only do so if there was something wrong with his brain. In any case, the northern region of the Tianji continent was already filled with hostages from various races. Yi Xian could casually change his appearance to that of a member of one of the races, which would be less eye-catching than Sha Baofeng, making it easier for him to fish in troubled waters and escape to the outer perimeter of the Tianji city. After reaching the outer industrial circle, Yi Xian still had one more thing to do, and that was to get within 100 li of the Void Battle Drum. Only then would he be able to activate the various beehive nodes of the Void Battle Drum, and send in the tens of millions of Void Soldier ladles in his body. After that, Yi Xian would activate the Void Battle Drum, and gather the power of tens of millions of soldiers of the Soldier Ladle clan to launch a final attack before swiftly escaping. The inner space of the Tianji city had many layers. Although they were combined together to form a large space, each layer was independent of each other, and had different access rights. Those who had the authority to enter the royal prison might not have the authority to enter the other levels. 3 of those levels were only accessible to Di's clone and the dozen or so mechanical experts who were beyond the Star Lord state. Among these 3 levels, the level that was located at the core of the Tianji city was definitely the most important one. Only a few of Di's clones could enter the core central region. Besides them, Old Geezer Wenxing and even the dozen region lords of the Heaven's Legacy clan didn't have the authority to enter. The reason for this was because Old Ghost Wenxing's main body was within the core region. His true form was the blue crystal the size of a human head that Yi Xian had seen at the top of the statue at the Bianyang Plaza on the Tianji continent. It was also the mechanical core that Grandpa Mo had mentioned. In Tianji City there had always been a legend. Grandpa Mo had once exclaimed that the legend could be true. The legend mentioned was related to Old Geezer Wenxing's main body. Legend has it that the Tianji clan's patriarch Di had a companion source core inside his body. When he was created by the human race's technological pioneer, Xingbo, he had a body with self-consciousness. This companion source core was only a blue crystal the size of a grain of rice. As for its function, no one knew. Dao. Later on, as Di gradually grew stronger, the blue crystal also grew bigger. It was removed from Di's body when he transformed his body again and again. However, it was left in Tianji City, which was not as big as it was at that time. In the end, when the Tianji City was built into a super fortress with a diameter of 1,000,000 meters, the blue crystal became the energy center of the enormous Tianji City. Moreover, like the other members of the Tianji race, it had developed its own consciousness, becoming a life form that was different from the other members of the Tianji race. It didn't have a humanoid body, or rather, its body was merely a blue crystal that had the consciousness of a life form. Wenxing was the consciousness of the blue crystal. It was a clone condensed from a wisp of consciousness that had been separated from the main body. That was why he had told Yi Xian that he and Di couldn't be separated. They were one entity because the mechanical core and Di were of the same origin. The only difference was that Di had removed the mechanical core from his body, but he didn't dare to throw it away casually. After all, Di still didn't completely understand his own existence, whether it was his consciousness or his body that had been modified countless times. Since Xingbo, the pioneer of the human race, had created him, how could he not have a backup plan? Before he understood everything, Dee didn't dare to throw away even a small screw that had been removed from his original body. What if that was the key to a backup plan? Over time, after tens of thousands of years of development, Dee became the patriarch of the Tianji clan, the undisputed overlord of the first universe plane. The blue crystal that was the size of a grain of rice that he had removed from his body controlled the entire Tianji city. In Tianji City, there had always been a rumor that the patriarch Dee had always been thinking of ways to completely refine the mechanical core and refine its consciousness, so that he could regain full control of Tianji City. At the same time, he could use this to find out whether Xingbo, who had created him, had any other plans. He knew that Xingbo had a backup plan. At the same time, the crystal consciousness in the mechanical core was also waiting for an opportunity to refine the electronic consciousness that represented Di Yi's original body. Of course, no one knew what its motive was. The reason why the entire Tianji city was basically under the control of Di Yi's several doppelgangers after nearly 10,000 years was said to be because Di Yi's original consciousness had entered the mechanical core. On the surface, it seemed that he was conducting some kind of secret research with the crystal consciousness in the core, but in reality, the two sides had always been in the crystal, secretly competing to refine each other. However, this kind of secret battle seemed to have formed a kind of balance. No one had the upper hand, and no one was at a disadvantage. Therefore, everything seemed normal in Tianji City. The mechanical core was still operating as usual. The entire Tianji City was overseen by a few of Di Yi's doppelgangers on the surface. The crystal consciousness in the core was the crystal consciousness in the crystal consciousness had condensed Old Ghost Wenxing as a clone and secretly cooperated with Di Yi to carry out everything. Chapter 36:15. That was why the mechanical core had suddenly lost all of its power, and why the energy shields of the nearly 10,000 cages in the Imperial prison had suddenly disappeared. Because at that time, Old Ghost Wenxing had already arrived at the core central region where his original body was. He wanted to participate and, together with the crystal consciousness in his original body, completely refine Di Yi's original body's electronic consciousness as soon as possible. If he succeeded, there would be no more Di Yi, and all of his doppelgangers' consciousnesses would instantly collapse. From now on, the entire Tianji city, as well as the entire Tianji clan, would have a new master. The crystal consciousness in the mechanical core would become the true master behind the scenes, and its doppelganger, Wenxing, would replace Di as the supreme overlord, who controlled the Tianji city and the Tianji clan on the surface. It could be said that, ever since this grain of rice crystal that was removed from Di Yi's original body when he first developed his self-consciousness grew and strengthened, and like the members of the Tianji clan, gave birth to the crystal consciousness that represented intelligent life forms, the hidden dangers of Tianji city and the Tianji clan appeared. It appeared. The crystal consciousness in the mechanical core and its doppelganger, Old Ghost Wenxing, wanted to replace Di and control the Tianji city of the Tianji clan. Di and his doppelgangers wanted to refine the crystal consciousness in the mechanical core. On one hand, they wanted to resolve the hidden dangers and not let this situation continue to worsen. On the other hand, they wanted to see if they could completely see the human race's technological pioneer, Xingbo, through refining this mechanical core. When Di was created, he left an unknown backup plan in his original body, or in his electronic consciousness. For this reason, Di Yi's original body found an excuse to enter the mechanical core nearly 10,000 years ago, and started a secret battle with the crystal consciousness in it. Everything on the stage of Tianji City and the Tianji clan was controlled and handled by the doppelganger. But now this balance was broken. Old Ghost Wenxing was the only doppelganger formed by the crystal consciousness. Once he entered the mechanical core, it was exactly the same as all of Di Yi's doppelgangers entering together. And now, Old Ghost Wenxing had already entered, and the crystal consciousness had become a whole body, while Di Yi's doppelgangers were bound, and their electronic consciousness was not a whole. Under this kind of competition, it was very likely that the electronic consciousness of Di Yi's original body would be refined in the end. This was too dangerous. The severity of the situation far exceeded the final result of all the people in the Imperial prison escaping at the same time. Once the crystal consciousness succeeded and refined the electronic consciousness that represented Di Yi's original body, then all of his doppelgangers would be destroyed in an instant and vanish into thin air. Disperse. If he lost in one move, he would lose everything. Because of this, the 3D clones, who were fighting against Yin Emperor and Ming Hao outside the Heavenly Secret Great Road and had obtained an overwhelming advantage, realized that something was wrong and Old Ghost Wen Xing didn't show up for a long time. Immediately after, something happened to the mechanical core, and its power suddenly stopped. Di's 3 doppelgangers instantly understood what had happened. Their expressions changed as they raised their heads and roared at the same time. Old Ghost Wen Xing, how dare you? You have ulterior motives. Have you finally gotten the chance today? Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Don't even think about succeeding. Screech. Along with these 3 angry roars, everywhere inside and outside the Heavenly Secret Great Road, even the inner defense circle outside the Great Road, and the star fortresses in the industrial circle outside the Great Road seemed to be responding to the roars. At the same time, mournful screams rang out. At the same time, the members of the Heavenly Secret Clan, the intelligent robots, and even some large fixed machines all fell to the ground. More than 10,000 members of the Heavenly Secret Clan and tens of millions of intelligent robots all fell to the ground like humans who had lost consciousness. The large fixed machines on the ground seemed to have suddenly crashed and were completely motionless. They were all Di's doppelgangers, and Di had injected a wisp of his consciousness into them to secretly control the entire Heavenly Secret Star area. But now, the electronic consciousness that represented Di's original body was in a bad situation. These doppelgangers, as well as the wisps of electronic consciousness that could not even be considered doppelgangers, were all recalled in an instant. At the same time, they all rushed to the core area of the Heavenly Secret Star area through the star network that covered the entire Heavenly Secret Star area. The 3 Star Lord doppelgangers, who were fighting against Yin Di and Nether Skull and had the absolute advantage, all fell to the ground after raising their heads and roaring. The withdrawal of their electronic consciousnesses was like the withdrawal of a human being's soul. Naturally, they couldn't move at all. When that happened, Yi Xian, who had changed his appearance, happened to pass by the central square of the Heavenly Secret Great Road where the battle was taking place. He suddenly saw the 3 Star Lord Di's doppelgangers collapse to the ground at the same time. Yi Xian was also guessing that they had roared at the sky before they collapsed. Yi Xian had some guesses, but he still didn't know exactly what had happened. However, it wasn't the right time to investigate the matter at all. Yi Xian immediately glanced at the 3D doppelgangers who had collapsed to the ground. Those were the bodies of Di's Star Lord doppelgangers, the leader of the Heavenly Secret Clan. They had been modified countless times. It was safe to say that all the materials used in the 3 bodies were of the best quality. It was a waste for them to lie there like dead dogs. Yi Xian had the electronic consciousnesses of 9 Heavenly Secret Clan members, including those of Baofeng Sha and Di Xiaofeng Di. He had also refined them and erased the marks of the Heavenly Secret Clan. They were completely under Yi Xian's control. These 9 electronic consciousnesses were equivalent to the primordial spirit. The 3 bodies of the first emperor lying on the ground like dead dogs could be seen as masterless flesh shells without primordial spirits. More importantly, they were of a high level. Di's electronic consciousnesses could carry out the combat ability of a Star Lord when they were inside. If Yi Xian were to absorb the refined electronic consciousnesses of Baofeng Sha, Di Xiaofeng and the others, he would have 3 more doppelgangers, and they would be robot doppelgangers. Even if they couldn't carry out the strength of a Star Lord, they should be able to reach the universe state, right? If they couldn't, the cosmic state, the 14th, or even the Genesis state, the 13th, would be fine too. They should at least be stronger than Yi Xian's original self, the mystic light state, which was the 11th. As these thoughts rapidly flashed through his mind, Yi Xian's heart immediately started thumping violently. He had always been completely unrestrained in this kind of matter of taking advantage of the situation. If there was an advantage, he wouldn't take advantage of it. In any case, it was an enemy resource. Chapter 36:16. Yi Xian had just collected the 3D1 avatars, who were lying on the ground like dead dogs, into the undying world within his body. Yin Emperor, who had lost his opponent, cast his gaze over. Then a few heaven-shaking roars resounded in the void. Roar. Too shameless. You can't beat this great emperor, so you actually use such a shameless method to escape. Your primordial spirit left first, and then you sent a small fry to collect your physical body. That's even more shameless than peeing. Roar. Following these furious roars, the dark green skull in the sky, which was originally caught off guard and stunned, suddenly opened its bloody mouth and directly charged towards Yixian, who was about to soar into the air. The blood-green nether puppet on the ground also strode over from the other side of the square. Its 10,000 feet tall body was like a giant mountain, and the ground of the square began to shake from the tremors. Its aura had already locked onto Yixian. Damn! What's going on? Een Emperor and his nether puppet, two terrifying existences with Star Lord strength, simultaneously pounced over from the ground. This scene scared Yixian so much that he was stupefied on the spot. Then his face turned green as he cursed. Fuck you, old bastard, why did you circle around this old man again? Can't you even pick up trash? Fine. Although he was dissatisfied, they were still two Star Lords. Although Yixian wasn't afraid, the location wasn't right. The current Tianji city wasn't a place to stay for long, and unexpected changes could happen at any time. Furthermore, that super death ray bomb in the Imperial prison was about to explode. Who knew what would happen? What's going on? Thinking like this, Yixian didn't hesitate any longer. With a thought, he directly teleported away from the heavenly secret road. His figure appeared in the air outside the road, and he didn't even turn his head as he rushed towards the inner defensive perimeter. Unfortunately, with his mere cultivation at the 8th level of the Profound Light Realm, this kind of ordinary teleportation was clearly far from being able to escape the range of the Star Lord's perception. Almost at the same time that Yixian's figure appeared in the distant void, the enormous dark green skull that the Een Emperor's original body had transformed into had already fallen. He quickly chased after him. Behind him, the blood-green nether puppet that was originally running wildly on the Heaven Secret Road also leaped up and followed closely behind the skull. It chased after him at a high speed. One side was a Star Lord, while the other side was only at the 11th level of the Mystic Light Realm, the 8th level of the Mystic Light Realm. With Yixian's strength, it was impossible for him to escape. He would be caught very soon, and if he was blocked from both the front and the back, he would have no choice but to reveal some techniques and abilities that he didn't want to reveal. He could only activate the interstellar coordinate jump ability that came with the system title, and instantly leave the Tianji City Star region. As for the two interstellar coordinates that he had imprinted in the first universe, the closest one was in the root of all evil star region. It was a few days' journey away from Tianji City. By the time he rushed over, it would be too late. Right now, the void battle armor was still placed in the star dock of a huge industrial planet in the industrial circle outside the Tianji City Star region. As long as Yixian rushed over, he could immediately take it away. However, if the void battle armor was moved into the core Tianji City Star region in a few days' time, it would be difficult for Yixian to get it back. A few days' time was enough for the Tianji race to calm down the unexpected chaos today. When that time came, the entire Tianji City Star region would be more strictly patrolled. It would be difficult for him to even get close to the industrial circle outside, let alone the core Tianji City Star region where the Heaven Secret Road was. However, he couldn't abandon the void battle armor no matter what. It was a killing weapon. It's just two old Star Lord monsters. Since they're still a big problem, I might as well get rid of them today. At the very least, I have to severely injure them. What right do they have to chase me around the world like a dog? Seeing that the dark green skull and the blood-green netherworld puppet behind him were about to catch up, Yixian's anger flared up. After thinking about it again, after leaving the Tianji City Star region, the truth about his identity would be revealed by the Tianji race soon. Now he brought forward his plan to the Een Emperor. It was not a big deal to expose himself in front of the monsters. He would just let him be a ghost who understood everything. Of course, even if he had made up his mind to expose himself, Yixian would not just stop and fight the other party head-on. To him, it was best to get to the industrial circle outside as soon as possible and control the void battle armor. Right now, Tianji City gave him a feeling that it was a dangerous place. He could not stay for long. Therefore, what he needed to do was to distance himself from the two Star Lords behind him. As long as he was fast enough, he would be able to get to the void battle armor ahead of time. At that time, the tens of millions of void soldiers would enter the void battle armor. Under a sudden attack, the Een Emperor and his netherworld puppet would be caught off guard. Even if they did not die, they would lose a layer of skin. Thinking of this, Yixian didn't hesitate any longer. He immediately waved his hand and summoned the Dongshu shuttle. Although the Starfield Life stronghold wasn't weak, Its burst of speed in a short period of time was definitely weaker than the Dongshu shuttle. Whoosh! With a flash of light, the Dongshu shuttle quietly appeared in the void in front of Yi Xian. In less than half a breath, Yi Xian had already rushed into it and turned into a purple streak of light, instantly disappearing into the distance. Before it could rush out of the Yin Emperor's line of sight, the concealment formation had already been activated, and it completely disappeared without a trace. Oh, so fast? The old man jumped in fright. Even the old Star Lord monsters were inferior to this kind of speed. The main reason was that Yi Xian's cultivation had increased too much compared to when he used the shuttle frequently. Of course, there was another reason, and that was that at this moment, he was using all his strength to activate the acceleration formation of the Dongshu shuttle without any regard for energy consumption. However, the methods of the old Monster Star Master were far superior to those of the Almighty Universe Master. Even if his speed was inferior and he had lost track of the other party, he could still rely on his subconscious intuition to chase after the old monsterine emperor from behind for a short period of time. He didn't run in the opposite direction and was able to keep up. Lost. At that moment, the Yin Emperor and the blood-green netherworld puppet behind him had already rushed into the defensive perimeter of the Tianji City star field. After passing through this star field, they would reach the industrial perimeter in front of them. However, with the Dongshu shuttle's extreme speed in a short period of time without any regard for anything, the Void Battle Puppet would undoubtedly have already made all the preparations and was waiting to give him a head-on attack. It was also at this moment that the enormous Tianji City star field in the void far behind them suddenly shook a few times. A huge explosion rumbled, as if the heavens were shaking and the earth was shaking. Rumble. This enormous explosion had never happened before. Although the point of explosion was clearly inside Tianji City, neither the flames nor any other light could be transmitted out. The entire Tianji City shook violently and the muffled sound of thunder transmitted out through the alloy hull of Tianji's main road. Chapter 36:17. The entire Tianji City Star Zone, including the Tianji main road in the core area, the inner defense circle, and the outer industrial circle, was in complete chaos. Originally, although the electronic consciousness of Di Yi's original body had entered the mechanical core nearly 10,000 years ago, it had started a long-lasting confrontation and competition with the crystal consciousness in the mechanical core. However, on the surface, Di Yi's Star Lord clones were in charge of the overall situation. Wen Xing, who represented the crystal consciousness in the mechanical core, cooperated with Di Yi's clones and did some things in secret. They were quite harmonious with each other and maintained the most basic harmony. They complemented each other and kept the Tianji City Star Zone peaceful for almost 10,000 years. However, everything had fallen apart at the moment. The most dangerous and tense place at the moment was naturally the interior of the mechanical core. Apart from the electronic consciousness of Di Yi's original self and the main body of the crystal consciousness Old Devil Wen Xing, who was his clone, and all the consciousness clones that Di Yi had left in the Tianji Star Zone were there at the moment. Inside the deep blue crystal, the competition between them wasn't something outsiders could understand, but it was easy to imagine how intense it was. As for the entire Tianji Star Zone, the three areas seemed to be in chaos on the surface, but in fact the atmosphere wasn't oppressive or heavy at all. Of course, panic was inevitable. Since the most serious accident had happened in the mechanical core, all of Di Yi's clones' electronic consciousnesses had rushed there as soon as possible. The entire Tianji Star Zone was instantly without a leader. The 10,000 slaves of the First Universe who had rushed out of the Emperor's prison in the Tianji City realized that they had been tricked the moment they saw the chaos outside after they rushed out of the giant alloy door of the passage. Some of them didn't care at all, while others cursed in exasperation, feeling that they had been forced to board a pirate ship. However, either way, they couldn't turn around and go back now even if they wanted to. Besides, such a serious disturbance had happened in the Tianji City. Even if they obediently went back and locked themselves up, there was no guarantee that Di Yi's clones wouldn't kill them to vent their anger and their fury. Therefore, regardless of whether they were willing or not, these tens of thousands of captives from the royal family immediately scattered in groups and began to flee as soon as they broke out of the royal prison. Regardless of how the subsequent matters were dealt with, for now, it was best to leave this star field that was in total chaos because of the change. Although all of Di Yi's clones had retreated, some core members of the Heavenly Fortune clan, who were Star Lords, soon arrived from various regions or seclusion to maintain the situation. However, they had no idea what was going on. They were more worried about the clan leader, D, and the chaos within Tianji City. Therefore, even though the 3 major districts of Tianji City had set up blockades almost immediately, the ones leading these blockades were the higher-ups of the Tianji clan. However, his true thoughts were not on this matter at all. It was just a matter of convenience. One side had no desire to continue fighting, and only wanted to leave as soon as possible. The other side was worried about the inner city of Tianji City, and only stopped them perfunctorily. The final result was that the tens of thousands of royal family captives, who were being held hostage in the imperial prison of the First Universe, quickly left. As far as the eye could see, in the 3 major districts of the Tianji City star field, there were very few people who were still lingering. Perhaps there were still interception scenes of battles going on. Most of the core members of the Heavenly Fortune clan, without exception, changed their expressions drastically after the terrifying explosion that shook the heavens and the earth. They all withdrew and rushed toward the Tianji Road in the core area. Those who stayed in the inner defense circle were fleets led by some ordinary clansmen. As for the outer industrial circle, it was basically just some intelligent robots that carried out orders to the death. They operated densely packed battleships and set up layers of defenses. Yi Xian arrived at the outer industrial circle under such circumstances. Although the Dongshu shuttle had activated the concealment array, it still emitted some energy waves as it rushed over at full speed. After being caught by the densely packed battleships in front of it, beams of star cannon energy light pillars of varying thickness were instantly shot over and intertwined in the void. The void was like endless fireworks blooming in the Milky Way. It was incomparably dazzling. Although Yi Xian was depressed, he did not want to be angry with a bunch of intelligent robots that only knew how to carry out orders to intercept. He could only carefully pilot the Dongshu shuttle and pass through the countless intertwining energy light pillars as fast as possible. Fortunately, the distance between them and the industrial giant where the void battleship was located was not far away. It was not far away. Soon, they were within 100 miles of the void. At this point, Yi Xian heaved a long sigh of relief. He stepped out of the Dongshu shuttle and waved his hand to keep it in the undying world in his body. The countless battleships and fortresses of various sizes that were spread out in the void suddenly lost their target. The countless star cannon energy light pillars that were intertwining in the void gradually stopped. Yi Xian did not dare to waste any more time. After entering 100 miles from the void battleship, he immediately waved his hand and activated the directional teleportation arrays in the thousands of beehive nodes of the void battleship. He sent the entire group of star cannon, which was tens of millions of soldiers, into the beehive nodes. 2 8-star cannon were sent into the core beehive node of the 9th layer of the void battleship. Yi Xian himself was the same as well. He stepped into the core node. He was still a little worried about just relying on these 2 8-star king ladles to control the overall situation. However, if the void essence crystal that was suspended above Yi Xian's sea of consciousness was added, then this matter would be absolutely foolproof. The void battleship didn't leave the enormous star dock of this industrial planet. Instead, it stayed inside and adjusted its direction, making the 300,000 meters in diameter in front of it face the direction he had come from with extreme speed. Very soon, the 10,000 zhang long dark green skull formed by Yin Emperor's true body, as well as the blood-green netherworld puppet that followed closely behind, appeared in his line of sight one after another. Without any hesitation, the tens of millions of soldiers in the thousands of beehive nodes of the void battleship began to move at Yi Xian's thought. There were a total of over 1,000 beehive nodes of 3,000 meters in diameter. Inside every one of them, there were tens of thousands of void soldier ladles standing guard, fully activating the unique biological frequency of the soldier ladle clan. These unique biological frequency were transmitted uniformly under the guidance of the soldier ladles in charge of every beehive node. Chapter 36:18. Wang. Before this majestic and terrifying biological frequency completely gathered, the outer industrial circle where Zhanla was located had already had a dense and weak trembling sound of the void. Its effect was far beyond the movement that a large number of void oscillators could create at the same time. Yi Xian even had an illusion that the entire vast and boundless star field was trembling under this sudden high-frequency buzzing sound. Immediately afterward, The mysterious wave energy that had completely gathered into one instantly poured out under the huge tremor of the void essence crystal. Shio! The terrifying sound of the air breaking was sharp enough to tear apart the sky, instantly making Yi Xian temporarily deaf. This feeling was far more shocking than the deafening sound of the huge explosion. His eyes widened in shock. In the void in front of him, there was clearly an invisible tide like an ocean of stars, leaking out from the core node. It followed the outer 9 rings of the void battle claw and continued to expand. In the end, it turned into an invisible force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. In an instant, it was about to explode. In an instant, it completely enveloped the vast void facing the huge mouth of the huge horn. Chilala! Boom! Rumble! Like the last time, the clear sound of tearing silk resounded everywhere. A void hundreds of thousands of miles away was torn apart inch by inch. A large amount of void turbulence blasted out. In several of the larger void cracks, a large amount of void turbulence directly formed a void like a black hole. Void vortex. Last time, when Zhanla activated the spiritual power of the demon, there were a total of 3 such void vortexes after a full blow. All of them were located in the void in front of the huge horn, separated by a certain distance from each other. This time there were as many as 9 void vortexes. In the void where these 9 void vortexes appeared at the same time, the originally densely packed battleships and fortresses were completely swallowed and disappeared as soon as the vortexes suddenly appeared. A large number of battleships at the edge were also sucked in by a terrifying force that was too powerful to resist. In the blink of an eye, they were sucked into the void vortexes and were annihilated. Roar! Hiss! Just as the Void War Claw was about to attack with all its might, the Een Emperor Old Monster and the Nether Skull behind him, who had already rushed out of the inner defensive perimeter, roared angrily at the same time as they rushed in the direction of the battle. At this moment they had already locked onto Yi Xian's aura, so as soon as they arrived, they were incomparably clear. He immediately sensed the location of this strand of qi. Unfortunately, before they could even get close, the Void Battle Drum displayed its might. Because they were too close, the giant space vortexes that appeared in an instant were still some distance away from Een Emperor and Nether Skull behind him. But even so, the invisible hurricane of the mysterious creature wave frequency still blew thousands of holes in the enormous dark green skull at the first moment. Its shape was about to become unstable and completely shatter. This kind of invisible mental storm or creature wave frequency hurricane was originally the best attack method to restrain illusory spirit bodies. On the other hand, the blood-green nether puppet, which had a physical body behind it, was actually able to withstand the blow of the invisible wave for a short period of time. Although it was also covered in wounds and had retreated tens of thousands of miles, it was still able to maintain its form. Compared to the enormous skull that was almost unable to maintain its shape, it was obviously much better. After all, it was a Star Lord with a physical body, and it was quite far away from the area where the 9 void vortexes spread out. The blood-green nether skull's current state could only be considered to be slightly injured at most. Roar! Screech! Een Emperor roared miserably. The tattered dark green skull, which was like a candle flickering in the wind, didn't hesitate and immediately plunged into the body of the blood-green nether skull that was rapidly retreating. It was originally Een Emperor's clone, and 30% of his nether primordial spirit had entered it. Since they were of the same origin, there was naturally no distinction between them. In the blink of an eye, the blood-green nether skull had retreated thousands of kilometers. It was obvious that it wouldn't be able to catch up for the time being. Yi Xian felt a little regretful that the attack didn't kill Een Emperor, and had only seriously injured his main body. The nether skull clone was slightly injured, and there would probably be a lot of trouble in the future. However, he couldn't stay any longer. The cooldown time of a great killing weapon like the Void Battle Carapace was too long. He couldn't launch a second attack before the entire soldier ladle race recovered. He didn't hesitate any longer and immediately stepped out of the battle carapace. After waving his hand, he collected the battle carapace and the entire soldier ladle race inside its thousands of beehive nodes into his body. He immediately activated the interstellar coordinate jump ability and disappeared from that star zone in the blink of an eye. At the same time, in the core area of the inner city of the Heavenly Secret City where the mechanical core was located. This layer was the most important core area of the entire Heavenly Secret City. It was located in the most central area of the colossal heavenly secret city. But its area wasn't vast. It only had a radius of 100 miles. This area of 100 miles was pitch black, and the visibility was very low. They could only rely on the light emitted by the blue crystal that was the size of a human head to illuminate the area. In fact, in the entire core area, other than the blue crystal that was floating in the middle of the air, there was nothing else. At this very moment, this sealed space of 100 miles was flickering with blue light. The blue crystal that was floating in the middle of the air was like a candle flame swaying in the wind. It was sometimes bright and sometimes dark, affecting this space and reflecting a kind of oppressive atmosphere. This strange situation lasted for about 6 to 7 minutes. Then, the blue crystal that had been flickering all along suddenly burst out with intense light without any warning. A few cold lights rushed out of the blue crystal in an extremely hurried and embarrassing manner. It gave people the feeling that they were forcibly squeezed out. After landing, these cold lights instantly turned into 4 figures. One of them was Old Devil Wenxing, whose face was extremely gloomy. The other 3 figures were the 3 clones of Di, who had fought against Yin Emperor and Ming Hao. The only difference was that they were now in energy form. Because the shells that they had forged for many years had been directly thrown away in the central territory of the heavenly secret city when the situation was extremely urgent at that time. In the plaza, after forcibly pushing these 4 figures out from the inside, the blue crystal that was blazing with blue light started to flicker again. However, the frequency and degree of fluctuation were far less intense than before. Moreover, it seemed to be gradually stabilizing. At this moment, the 3 clones of Di who had appeared immediately surrounded Old Devil Wenxing, whose face was extremely gloomy, and laughed sinisterly. "Old man, you've failed. After all, this mechanical core is your main body. Your main consciousness wouldn't want us to torment it too much and cause it to collapse." Chapter 36:19. Both Di's doppelganger and Old Man Wenxing, who was the doppelganger of the mechanical core, knew that their original bodies, or rather their main consciousnesses, had been fighting each other in this blue crystal for nearly 10,000 years. However, this layer of cloth had not been torn apart. Therefore, Di's doppelganger and Old Ghost Wenxing, while quietly waiting for the result of the confrontation between the original body and the main consciousness, tacitly maintained a harmonious appearance on the surface, either in the open or in the dark, to maintain the Tianji clan. And the normal operation of the heavenly legacy race, however. As time went by, Old Man Wenxing couldn't hold back anymore. When he thought that the opportunity had arrived, he participated in the battle between the true forms and main consciousnesses of both parties, eventually involving Di's clone as well. The only result now was that the window paper used to cover up the embarrassment between the 2 sides and maintain the surface amiability had finally been completely torn apart. Under such circumstances, putting aside the 10,000 years of battle between the true forms and main consciousnesses of both parties, Di's 3 Star Lord clones, who were currently in the heavenly legacy race, and Old Man Wenxing, who represented the mechanical core, were obviously unable to tacitly communicate with each other like before. They could no longer maintain it. The battle immediately began. The 4 of them didn't leave the dark secret chamber that was only 100 square kilometers in radius. Although it was a battle between 4 Star Lords, the mechanical core floating in the sky of the central region was extraordinary to begin with. Also, the true forms and main consciousnesses of both parties were inside, so they would be restrained during the battle. The blue crystal wouldn't be affected by the battle. Boom! Boom! Old Man Wenxing fought 1 against 3, but in the end he still lost. That was already a foregone conclusion. A huge explosion echoed. After only a dozen minutes, Old Man Wenxing was blown into a cloud of mysterious and unknown energy, completely vanishing into thin air. It had to be said that this kind of crystal life form was still very miraculous. Old Man Wenxing, as an avatar of this kind of crystal life form, had perfectly evolved all of the characteristics of the demon cultivator. Yi Xian originally thought that he was the first outsider in the history of the demon cultivator to successfully infiltrate his clan. But in reality, Old Ghost Wenxing had already completed this matter long before he had arrived. It was a pity that Old Man Wenxing had finally disappeared. It was not because he was not strong enough, but because Di's 3 doppelgangers were not weak either. Now, because of the efforts of Di's original body in the mechanical core, The 4 of them were temporarily sealed in this small space with a radius of 100 miles. Unable to escape, Old Ghost Wenxing could only sullenly be killed and turned into ashes. Soon, with the complete death of Old Devil Wenxing, the temporary seal on the core area of 100 miles was completely lifted. Diyi's original consciousness still had to contend with the crystal consciousness of the core from time to time. In order to eliminate Wenxing, he was able to buy a short 10 minutes. Seal. It was already very difficult to prevent him from escaping in this area. It was difficult to do more. Old Ghost Wenxing was already dead, so there was no need for more. Then Diyi's 3 doppelgangers rushed out of the core area. One of them stayed outside the core area. Its responsibility was to guard this place and not let anyone get close. At the same time, it paid close attention to the changes in the situation inside the core area. Even though the Tianji City Star sector was in chaos, Diyi's doppelganger did not leave. After all, the confrontation in the mechanical core was the most important. Of course, the doppelganger that was left behind did not have a body. It was temporarily condensed from its electronic consciousness. Its original body had been thrown on the Tianji Road Central Territory Square when the accident happened. Naturally, another doppelganger of DE would be sent over later. At this time, the electronic consciousnesses of the other 2 doppelgangers of DE had already arrived at the Central Territory Square on the Tianji Road Central Territory Square. The 2 of them were responsible for guarding the royal territory and commanding the entire Tianji City Star sector to maintain its normal operation. Now that the royal prison was empty, all the slaves of the first universe had escaped. Even the interior of the royal prison had been blown up. There was no need for the doppelganger of DE guarding the royal territory to go there. The 2 of them would work together to clean up the aftermath of this breakthrough. A punitive expedition was launched. After reorganizing the internal order of the Tianji City Star sector, the Tianji clan would begin to deal with the mass escape of the slaves of the royal family. However, before that, the 3 doppelganger shells that had been thrown on the Central Territory Square on the Tianji Road had to be found first. As Star Lord's electronic consciousnesses, they could still move freely without the shells, but their combat ability would be greatly affected. Unfortunately, they couldn't find the 3 top-level shells at all. Diyi's doppelganger retrieved the surveillance images of the Central Territory Square and its surroundings after the incident, and soon found something. The 3 top-level Star Lord shells had been taken away by someone else. At this point, news came from the industrial sector that Sha Baofeng's psychic battle talisman, which he had brought from the demons, had been taken away. Also, the enemy had activated the battle talisman and launched a terrifying attack before leaving, severely wounding Indi and his nether skull clone. In the end, both parties left one after another, leaving behind 9 terrifying void turbulence vortexes in the outer industrial sector. They were slowly expanding outwards, and 2 of them had already fused together. It would probably be difficult for them to stabilize again. In addition, the terrifying attack launched by the psychic battle talisman before it left wasn't driven by the mental power of the demons. The energy left in the void was very similar to the unique biological frequency of the void soldier ladles. Diyi's 2 doppelganger immediately understood what had happened. The soldier ladles had fallen into Prince Xian's hands, as had the psychic battle talisman, as well as the 3 top-level Star Lord shells that had been built after years of hard work. Apart from that, the guy had a lot of treasures and fortunes. Prince Xian, the invincible god of war, the young master of Linghu clan, and the young master of the Netherworld clan. Every identity represented a lot of treasures and secrets that even they couldn't ignore. At this moment, Diyi's 2 clones recalled everything that had happened. For a moment, just like old Ghost Zhan Tu and the ancestor Wu Mei, they developed an incomparably strong interest in everything that was hidden in Yixian's body, as well as an extremely strong desire for it. Chapter 36-20. Kacha. Kacha. As Chanas opened his eyes, the sound of bones mending and connecting could be heard from his body. This was a sign that the injuries in his body were rapidly recovering. Previously, this guy had been sent flying back from the entrance of the passage at the top of the stronghold in a fit of anger by the Yin Emperor. If not for his decent cultivation, he would have died on the spot. Even so, it would take at least half a month for him to fully recover. Now, in just a short period of 10 days, although Chana's injuries had mostly recovered, he was still unable to get up. Now, all his injuries had healed in an instant. For a moment, an aura similar to that of the one Xing old man was emitted from his body. However, it was fleeting and quickly disappeared. His cultivation had also stabilized at the initial stage of the cosmic realm, the 14th realm. Compared to Chana's original cultivation, it had risen by nearly 2 realms in the blink of an eye. However, he still seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with this. After getting up, he first checked his body and then sighed. Although the original owner of this body was seriously injured, and the crystal consciousness seed hibernating in his body instantly occupied the source core in his brain and took over his physical body, this cultivation strength is still too weak. Even if the crystal consciousness seed was used to grow, it would only be able to climb to the initial stage of the cosmic realm. This won't do. It seems that I can only hibernate for a period of time. At the very least, I have to grow to the 15th realm of the universe realm, the pinnacle of the 9th realm. Fortunately, this body's identity and background are not bad. Not only does he hold a high position in the demon race, but he is also the commander of the demon Imperial Guards in the Imperial City. He is also related to that mysterious brat. Although they are not together now, I can think of a way and wait for an opportunity to mix in with him again. Let's go. There is still no progress in the confrontation between the main consciousness and Di Yi's original body. Based on what I saw when I went in this time, if there are no accidents, I'm afraid it will continue for tens of thousands of years. Di Yi's original body's electronic consciousness does not have any advantage, so there is no need to worry about that. However, as a crystal consciousness clone of the main consciousness, I have to continue trying to push this process forward in the outside world. It's good that Tianji City has fallen. Now, it seems that the most valuable and potential to be exploited in the current era of the 3 major planes is that mysterious little one. Luckily, when he brought Chanas into Tianji City for the first time, this old man took precautions and planted a crystal consciousness seed in the bodies of the people around him. Once the first clone fell, this crystal consciousness seed would immediately awaken. Otherwise, the main consciousness would not be able to split into the same crystal. In the case of a consciousness doppelganger, the subsequent situation is not optimistic. Fortunately, we can see hope again. This time Tianji City is in chaos. I'm afraid that the allied army of the slave races will withdraw one fleet after another under the orders of the various races. The entire allied army will fall apart very quickly. The first universe is going to be in chaos. It will enter a new situation where the various races compete for supremacy. In this kind of environment, this old man's new avatar can take advantage of the chaos and quickly grow. As he muttered to himself, Chana stood up, pushed open the cabin door and walked out. At the same time in Tianji City, as the Star-Lord avatar of the Tianji clan's leader, it was naturally impossible to prepare only one shell. The 3 avatars of Di, who were stationed outside Tianji City all year round, each had a spare shell. Now that the main shell had been stolen, Di's 3 avatars had no choice but to temporarily reside in the spare shells. Although they still had the strength of a Star-Lord, they were far less powerful than before. Some of their skills were restricted by the shells, and they could not use them. Of the 3 avatars, one had to always be stationed outside the sealed space where the mechanical core was located in the core area of Tianji City, to observe at all times in case of any unusual movements. The remaining 2 avatars of DE were now jointly guarding Tianji City. Since the avatar guarding the Emperor's prison and the entire Emperor's prison were almost completely destroyed, there was no need to take care of the other avatar. At this moment, the 2 avatars of DE were having a secret discussion in a secret chamber in a certain area of Tianji City. Now, I highly suspect that the kid's identity as Prince Xian is most likely fake. The Eternal Dynasty is only concerned about their reputation, and reluctantly admitted it. If that's the case, it can explain why he was immediately sent away as soon as he returned to the immortal planet. That's right. Although the Eternal Dynasty reluctantly admitted it, they didn't want to let him take too much advantage, nor did they want to keep him around and be an eyesore. That's why they sent him to the Death Star region, and ordered him never to return to the Eternal Imperial City without an order. It seems that even if we announce his identity, it won't affect the overall situation. The greater situation won't have much of a positive effect. The undying Imperial Court can abandon him at any time, so there's no meaning to it. If that's the case, let's just let him take a little more advantage. This kid's identity will be kept a secret for the time being. This way, it'll be easier for us to make arrangements for him and seize all his secrets. This matter is settled. Besides, now that the Emperor's prison is empty, the captured hostages of the various slave races will probably all return to their races soon. The situation in the first universe is already chaotic. Tianji City must prepare for this matter. Should we immediately send out troops to suppress them, or? It's not appropriate to send out troops to suppress them. The slave races will probably wait and see. If we send out troops now, we'll force them to unite and rebel. Don't forget how we took over the entire first universe back then. Nibble. Destroy them one by one. We could do it back then and we can do it this time too. Even if they suffer losses, they might not realize it. Once bitten, twice shy isn't suitable for everyone. Let's evacuate. It just so happens that the space turbulence whirlpools in the outer industrial circle are too troublesome. We can only give up on this star region. However, a full-scale evacuation can only be carried out step by step. First, we'll start with Tianji City, then the countless fixed space fortresses in the inner defensive circle, and finally the countless construction bases in the outer industrial circle. All these years, because of the existence of Old Man Wenxing, Tianji City has always been floating in this void space in the first form of the space road. But now, the main consciousness of the crystal life in the mechanical core can't even take care of itself. It's been held back by the electronic consciousness of the original body. The other body has been completely annihilated. For tens of thousands of years, the complete authority of Tianji City is in our hands for the first time. This kind of opportunity is too rare. It just so happens that the other bodies have been exploring other unknown universes these years, and they've found a sealed miniature universe that's extremely valuable. Chapter 36-21. Although the Heavenly Legacy main city was not like the Starfield Fortress, which was a living battleship with the ability to repair and grow, it was still the main base of the Heavenly Legacy race. Its ability to repair damage was also astounding. There were countless intelligent robots of the mechanic class in the Heavenly Fate clan. That was why the Emperor's prison had been mostly destroyed by the Super Death Ray bomb, and even the folded space support structure of that floor had been seriously damaged. However, as the overwhelming number of mechanical robots moved to the Emperor's prison, it was quickly restored to its original state in half a day. So far, the entire space zone of the Heavenly Fate clan had been restored to order. The industrial circle, the defense circle, and the main road of the Heavenly Fate clan were all peaceful and orderly. Only the turbulence vortexes at the edge of the industrial circle, which had been left behind by the terrifying Void Battle LA's attack, were still there, and were slowly expanding. The Celestials' legacy race had no intention of repairing it. They were already preparing to carry out a planar migration to a recently discovered small, sealed, independent universe that was of great value. Naturally, they wouldn't spend the effort to deal with this matter. The first universe used to belong to the Overlord Heavencraft race, but for some time in the future, it would belong to the various races of the first universe. Since that was the case, these space vortexes would be left for them to repair. They could also delay the efforts of these races. Although the Emperor's prison had been repaired, it was empty. There was no need to guard it. Of the 3 Star Lord clones that DE had stationed in the main city of the Heavenly Secret City, apart from the one that was guarding the core area, the other 2 were guarding the main city at the same time. Crack! Crack, crack, crack. The never-before-heard sound of machines grinding echoed throughout the vast space zone of the Heavenly Fate clan. The Tianji main city was located in the core region of the Star region. It had been floating in the void like a steel continent for almost 10,000 years. On that day, after almost 10,000 years, the main city of the Heavenly Fate clan finally started to change. It would return from the first form of the void continent to the second form of a super fortress. The former was the regular form. The latter, on the other hand, was in combat form. As the Tianji main city entered its second form as a super stronghold, this also meant that the Tianji main city and the entire Tianji clan had experienced a huge increase in strength for the second time after the clan's strength had exploded, when they occupied the first universe. After nearly 10,000 years, they had finally reached their current level of strength. Once again, the ground began to expand. After all, it was a colossal object with a diameter of 1 million meters, which was equivalent to 1,000 kilometers. Just this transformation alone took more than an hour. Finally, This steel continent that was suspended in the core area of the Tianji City star sector transformed into a circular silver superfortress. It had a diameter of 1,000 kilometers, and its interior was equipped with a large amount of space-folding technology, as well as various cutting-edge technologies of the Heaven's Legacy race. This was definitely a terrifying space-killing machine. Even a terrifying existence like the Void Battle Kara would not be able to withstand a single blow from it. A single beam of light from the main cannon could completely obliterate it, leaving not even a single strand of hair behind. This was because the main cannon of this super fortress had a diameter of 500,000 meters, which far exceeded the diameter of the Void Battle Kara's diameter of 300,000 meters. A single beam of light from the main cannon would completely cover the entire fortress. In addition to this super antimatter light energy main cannon with a diameter of 500 kilometers, the Tianji fortress also had a large number of other secondary cannons. Some used antimatter light energy, while others used other driving energy. They were all cutting-edge star-sky technology. Some of them had even been kept a secret. Even the immortal dynasty of the Third Universe's human race had not mastered them. This was the only one among the three universes. It could be said that as long as this super fortress with a diameter of 1 million meters still existed, the Tianji clan would never be wiped out. Just this Tianji fortress alone had the combat power to challenge all the starry fleets of the immortal dynasty. Another half an hour later, the grinding sounds of machinery in the void gradually disappeared. The internal transformation of the Tianji fortress was also completed. Immediately after, a dense and weak buzzing sound rang out in the void. The terrifyingly colossal Tianji fortress was activating its space jump ability. A colossal object of this level could traverse an extremely terrifying distance in space with a single conventional space jump. Even so, the Tianji fortress still needed to perform 3 conventional space jumps in a row before it could reach a relatively remote wormhole in the universe. After entering there, it would then perform a wormhole jump that was even further away. All of this was completed in half a day. Another half a day later, when the Tianji fortress rushed out from another exit of this remote wormhole, it had already reached the border area of the First Universe's deepest region. There was not even a single slave race of the First Universe here. It was really too remote. In the next half a day, the Tianji fortress continued to perform conventional space jumps of terrifying distances. In the end, it entered a small wormhole that had just been discovered to be relatively stable, and was not marked on the star map of the First Universe. Although this wormhole was relatively small in scale, it would not have been discovered by a fleet of the Tianji clan not long ago otherwise. However, its specifications were not low. It was actually a wormhole at the level of a plane. The universe void that it was connected to was not the plane of the First Universe. Instead, it was another relatively small independent plane. Although it was relatively small, it was far beyond the level of a so-called secret territory. Its territory was so vast that it was equivalent to 10 Tianji star zones. More importantly, within this small universe plane, there were only 2 wormholes that were like passageways to enter and exit the universe. One was the wormhole that the Tianji fortress had just entered. It was a small wormhole at the level of a plane that was connected to the void space of the outermost star zone of the First Universe. The other one was connected to an even more secretive universe plane. The main reason why Di's 2 bodies had decided to carry out the Great Migration of Planes and move the headquarters of the Tianji clan to this small universe plane was because there was a wormhole that was connected to this, even more secretive universe plane. They could not wait to explore this mysterious universe plane that they did not even know how dangerous it was. The last wormhole jump took an entire day. After all, the void space that this small wormhole was connected to was no longer the plane of the First Universe. This was a wormhole jump at the level of a plane. Chapter 36:22. Di's 2 clones couldn't hold back their excitement as soon as they arrived at their new base. They immediately sent an exploration fleet to the wormhole in the depths of the plane. This wormhole was connected to a mysterious void. It was pitch black inside. However, when an exploration fleet of the Heavenly Fortune clan discovered that place not long ago, they found a lot of remains of primordial creatures that had long ceased to exist in that mysterious void. Those remains of primordial creatures were very powerful. The ones at the outermost edge were all at the Star-Lord state. The deeper they went, the more powerful the remains floating in the void became. That exploration fleet of the Heaven's Legacy race was simply unable to penetrate. In the end, it was completely wiped out, and not a single ship returned. For this reason, the Heaven's Legacy race had not only lost 10 fortresses with a diameter of 10,000 meters, but also lost 10 members of the Heaven's Legacy race. However, at the last moment, the crew of the exploration fleet fulfilled their mission and sent out some information and images without caring about anything else. They only went a little deeper, but they found the remains of primordial creatures that were beyond the Star Lord state. In other words, they were terrifying existences at the level of domain lords. That was only the deepest part of the periphery. It was certain that they would definitely find the remains of sector lords, or even more powerful primordial creatures if they went any deeper. That was a boundless treasure trove. It was definitely a great opportunity for the Heavenly Fortune clan. Some of those powerful primordial creatures were still bleeding golden blood, and their remains hadn't decayed after billions of years. Any of their flesh and blood would definitely be the best materials that the Heavenly Fortune clan could use to build the bodies of their clansmen. However, great opportunities also represented great horrors. The pressure contained within the remains of primordial creatures was simply too terrifying. Even a starry sky fortress with a diameter of 100,000 meters could not withstand the pressure, and would completely collapse upon reaching a certain depth. Dee's avatar even suspected that in the deepest part of this mysterious void, there might be ancient creatures who had not yet fallen, and were only hibernating here to recover from their injuries and recuperate. All in all, that was a land of treasures, but they couldn't enter it recklessly. They had to get in touch and slowly develop it. This was also the real reason why Dee's two bodies had decided to move Tianji Fortress to this miniature universe outside the void space. In this way, it was equivalent to building their base at the entrance of this void treasure land. They could explore it at any time and slowly nibble away at it. At this moment, after the arrival of Tianji Fortress, the first exploration fleet formed by 10 starry sky fortresses entered the mini-universe wormhole that connected to the mysterious void one after another. The two avatars of Dee who were guarding Tianji Fortress were filled with hope. Watching the exploration fleet of this big fortress disappear into the wormhole entrance, the 2D doppelgangers muttered to themselves. Right now, the 3 planes of the universe merely represent the current universe. However, countless years ago, there was a primordial era that was even more mysterious and powerful. Now in the 3 planes we've discovered some secret areas or starry sky ominous lands that still have traces of the primordial era. For example, the origin of all evil is one of them. If I'm not mistaken, the races of the Federation of the Second Universe are invading the First Universe on a large scale because they're aiming for the origin of all evil. Let them fight each other and fight for the good fortune of that starry sky ominous land like a swarm of bees. Our Tianji clan sits alone in a mysterious void space. In time, once we uncover the secrets of the primordial era, we'll rise again and dominate the 3 planes. From today onwards, all of this will begin in full swing. In one night, the Tianji continent disappeared and transformed into the second battle form of the super fortress, leaving the first universe. Apart from the Tianji clan, no one in the 3 planes of the universe knew about this. With the departure of the Tianji fortress, it could be said that the main camp of the Tianji clan was basically completely relocated. The inner defensive circle and the outer industrial circle that were left behind in the Tianji star sector could only be regarded as subsidiary parts of the Tianji fortress. Even if they were to abandon all of this, the Tianji fortress would be able to rebuild an even more powerful and terrifying defensive circle and industrial circle in that miniature universe in the near future. From now on, that miniature universe had a name. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call it the Little Universe of Tianji. With the departure of the Tianji fortress, the inner defensive circle and the outer industrial circle of the entire Tianji star sector began to be dismantled and dismantled. All the large-scale machinery and equipment were dismantled by countless intelligent robots from one star after another and loaded into the countless battleships, fortresses of various sizes in the various star docks of the industrial circle. Every time a fleet was loaded, it would immediately set sail. The Tianji clan was using this method to take away all the technology and basic facilities that they had left behind in the Tianji star sector. Before long, there would not be a single scrap of alloy in the entire Tianji star sector. All traces of the Tianji clan, the overlords of the first universe, living here for tens of thousands of years would be erased. This place would become an incomparably desolate star sector. Other than the abandoned stars that had been stripped of their alloy battle suits and terrifying weapons, there would only be a few gigantic space turbulence whirlpools left. By the time the outside world learned of this, the Tianji clan would have completely disappeared. There would not be any trace of them left in the three universes. The slave races of the first universe, who had just been freed, could only helplessly ally with each other and clean up the mess left behind in this part of the starry sky after the disappearance of the main camp of the Tianji clan. To the races of the first universe, this universe was their home. It was the foundation of their existence. Even though the formation of the gigantic space turbulence whirlpools in the Tianji star sector had nothing to do with them, they could only pinch their noses and think of ways to resolve it. Otherwise, if too much time passed, it would evolve into a supermassive black hole, and there would be no possibility of mending it. In the end, the entire first universe would be swallowed up by this supermassive black hole. Of course, all of this would happen later. Currently, in the Tianji city, countless intelligent robots were nervously dismantling all the equipment and facilities on the star fortresses in the inner defense circle and the outer industrial circle. In the outside world, no one had realized that an unforeseen event had happened in the Tianji city star sector that was destined to shake the three universes in the future. However, this was only referring to the migration of the entire Tianji clan. As for the unexpected commotion that had occurred in the Tianji city star sector, news of it had already spread throughout the three universes. The hostages of the royal families of the first universe that had been held hostage in the Tianji city imperial prison had all escaped. Chapter 36-23. The ancestral land of the ferocious race was located in the western part of the first universe, which was called the Ferocious Star Zone. The 10,000 members of the ferocious race who were stationed on the Ferocious Star Zone at the edge of the Tianji Star Zone were only a branch of the race. In the giant ferocious star field, there were several hundred administrative planets where the giant ferocious race lived. Although this slave race couldn't compare to the powerful demon race in the first universe controlled by the Heaven's Legacy race, they weren't too weak. The news that the 10,000 members of the ferocious race who were stationed in the Tianji Star Zone had all been killed had reached the Ferocious Star Zone, the royal planet of the ferocious race. The Tianji race didn't care about the death of the 10,000 members of the branch at all. They didn't even send a message of condolence, which infuriated the royal family of the ferocious race, but they didn't dare to say anything. That race's nature of fearing the strong and bullying the weak had long been ingrained in their bones. The Tianji race was the overlord of the first universe. Even the ferocious king didn't dare to talk about the Tianji race in private in his territory. It would be a disaster if there were spies planted by the Tianji race on the ferocious star. He would never know that the Heaven's Legacy race had always believed that it was a waste to plant spies in a race with such a strong servile nature. Even so, there were still hostages among the ferocious giant tribe's royal family, who were held captive in Tianji city. Every ferocious giant tribe's royal family would be asked to send the most talented ferocious giant tribe's royal uncle to Tianji city. Generation after generation, the old and the dead. There were 6 royal uncles of the ferocious race who were still alive in the hands of the Tianji race. Of the 6 royal family members of the ferocious race, 3 were at the peak of the 9th rank of the universe state, and the last one was a star lord. Today, the 6 powerful members of the giant ferocious royal family had all returned to the giant ferocious planet. Right now, they were in the giant ferocious royal city, discussing important matters with the giant ferocious emperor and the elders of the giant ferocious royal family. At this moment, the 6 royal uncles of the giant ferocious royal family were speaking one after another. Although the 6 royal uncles had successfully escaped from Tianji city and returned to the giant ferocious planet safely, the 6 of them had incomparably worried expressions. Everyone else in the palace was the same. The entire palace was filled with gloom. This time we were indeed too careless. We were tricked by the devil race and were actually tricked out of the imperial prison by him. Alas, who would have thought that the demon tribe would be so powerful that they could even bribe the new young patriarch of the Tianji clan, Sha Baofeng, to participate in this conspiracy? As expected of the number 1 slave clan, their methods are too ruthless and sinister. This time, the weaker races of the ferocious race have suffered because of him. Now that the royal prison is empty, the heavenly fate race will definitely annihilate us. Unfortunately, there was no way to turn back. Even the imperial prison was blown up. Otherwise, for the sake of the entire race, this old man would have turned back. No matter who came, they wouldn't leave even if a blade was at their neck. Who could afford to offend the Heaven's legacy race? It's too late to say anything now. Everyone, regardless of whether they were willing or not, could only escape under the circumstances at that time. Now that we've returned to the giant ferocious star, even if we go back now, it's useless. Maybe the Heaven's legacy race is thinking about which races to pick out and exterminate. If we go back now, we'll definitely be the first ones to stand out. What should we do? What should we do? As the 6 generations of ferocious race imperial uncles said these words, the atmosphere in the entire ferocious royal palace became even more oppressive. After a while, the ferocious emperor seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He sucked in a breath of cold air and cried out involuntarily, "Not good, I'm afraid we're really in trouble this time. The real trouble isn't just the heavenly fate race, but also the fiendish races of the Second Universe Federation. A crisis is coming." Hearing this, everyone was stunned for a moment, and then they all agreed. "You haven't forgotten about the great battlefield at the front of the demon domain, right? Our ferocious race also has a fleet there, and it's not small either. There are several members of the royal family guarding it. Now that such a big change has happened in Tianji City, the main fleet will most likely not go there. Anyway, Tianji City is in the central region, and there are many ancestral lands of the servant races along the way. They will be happy to see how we are dealt with. The Second Universe's alliance army is not easy to deal with. After they learn about this situation, they will know that the races of the First Universe don't have the support of the Heavenly Fate race behind them. They will definitely be like wolves and tigers. Under such circumstances, if our ferocious race's powerful fleet still stays at the front line, won't that attract hatred? Now that we have already angered Master's Heavenly Fate race, if we offend the races of the Second Universe, I'm afraid we will really be completely exterminated this time. The powerful alliance army of the Second Universe will soon arrive at the ferocious star. Don't look at how many races there are in the First Universe. There are also many powerful races like the demon race. They will definitely take the lead to form an alliance, but there's no need for us to stay at the front line and attract attention. Evacuate, we have to evacuate. At this point, the ferocious royal family members in the surrounding halls all seemed to wake up from a dream and echoed one after another. Soon, the ferocious race's secret edict to urgently recall their vanguard fleet at the front line was sent out at the first moment. It could be imagined that not long after this secret edict was sent through the First Universe's Starry Sky Network to the Ferocious Legion's royal commanders at the front line, the entire Ferocious Legion, the Ferocious Legion would soon withdraw unconditionally. This scene in the Ferocious Star Emperor City was not a special case in the First Universe. In fact, many of the royal hostages of the First Universe's servant races who had been held in the hands of the Heavenly Fate race had all carried out secret negotiations with the upper echelons of their races after returning to their respective races. Although there were only a few soft-hearted races like the ferocious race in general, all the major races had made the decision to withdraw their vanguard fleet at the front line. This included the demon race. They were the same as most races. The reason why they made such a decision was not because they were afraid of the alliance army of the Second Universe, but because the overall situation of the First Universe had changed. Even if they wanted to form an alliance army to resist the invaders of the Second Universe, it should not be led by the Heavenly Fate race. The temporary withdrawal of the vanguard fleet of the various races was mostly to wait for the new alliance army of the First Universe to be officially established. Then, they would send out a new fleet of battleships to form a brand new alliance army of the First Universe. Chapter 36-24. Counting the time, it had only been less than half a month since Yi Xian had left the frontline battlefield of the demon domain. A plane-level space war like this could easily take years or even decades. Sometimes, after a regional war, the two camps would need several years to rest and reorganize. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Moreover, before Yi Xian left, the alliance of the two universes had just finished a great battle of the vanguard fleet. It could be said that they had suffered heavy losses, especially the alliance of the Second Universe, which had suffered heavy losses. Half a month was not even enough to rest and reorganize after the war. Therefore, since Yi Xian left, not to mention a full-scale war between the two camps, there had not even been a small-scale probing war between them. However, in half a month both camps had basically rested and reorganized. The alliance of the first universe was full of fighting spirit. After half a month of boredom, they were already restless and wanted to fight. Especially with the departure of Yi Luo, who was originally only the deputy commander of the Vanguard fleet, was promoted to the front line and became the new commander of the alliance of the servant races of the first universe. The commanders of the Vanguard fleet of the servant races in his camp were still looking forward to a great victory. This matter was to curry favor with him. Unfortunately, the change in the situation was too unpredictable. It was simply too unexpected. In just half a day, the alliance of the servant races of the first universe had all left. The fleets of the various races that had originally formed a long line of defense in a vast area of the starry sky were all gone in just half a day. Before Yi Luo could recover from his shock, he was separated from the alliance of the second universe by a few kilometers. Of the battleships confronting each other in the void, only the 10,000 or so battleships of the Vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan headquarters were left. In the past 2 days, Yi Luo had been in high spirits. When he had nothing to do, he would deduce the situation of the battlefield in the flagship fortress of Expel. The feeling of controlling nearly 1,000,000 starry sky battleships under his command made him intoxicated. He would often be immersed in his deduction for most of the day. In addition, the Vanguard fleet of the servant races of the first universe that had retreated one after another did not greet him. He had already fallen out with the Tianji clan, so what was there to greet? Therefore, even after all the fleets of the other races had left, Yi Luo was still in the dark. He was immersed in the deduction of the situation of the war with excitement. It was not until he was ready to order a probing attack that he realized that the void to his left and right was basically empty. The long line of defense that stretched for millions of kilometers in the void was now as if a dog gnawed on it. Yi Luo was. But when? Then, the tens of thousands of battleships, fortresses of the Vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan that were suspended alone in the void began to frantically retreat as if they were fleeing. In the face of this strange scene, the alliance of the various races of the second universe that was 100,000 kilometers away in the void was dead silent. Not a single battleship chased after them. In fact, half a day ago, when the fleets of the alliance of the first universe retreated one after another, they had already noticed it. At first they did not pay much attention to it, thinking that it was just a routine adjustment of the defense line. It was not until the number of battleships in the void on the other side that the vanguard of the various races of the second universe's alliance, that the alliance of the Vanguard fleet finally took it seriously. However, they were certain that this was a conspiracy of the alliance of the first universe's servant races. No matter what the other party's true intentions were, it was obviously not a good thing. It was the same now. Such a huge and long line of defense in the void was completely gone in the blink of an eye. Were they trying to fool a little kid? If they advanced rashly at this time, they would be fooled. In the end, they might even fall into a trap. Even the headquarters of the myriad Luo Federation hidden in the darkness in the void far behind the enormous alliance line, as well as the upper echelons of the human race's cultivation and technology camps, were all secretive about this scene. They looked at each other, and no one dared to make a sound. They did not understand what had happened. What was the ultimate goal of the other party's strange actions? When the tens of thousands of battleships of the Tianji clan's Vanguard fleet, led by Yi Luo, had completely left, there was not a single enemy battleship to be seen in the vast void of the universe in front of them. Then another half a day passed. The alliance of the second universe, the myriad Luo Federation, and the human race had settled down in their respective camps. The informant inserted in the first universe continued to send the news over. Great changes in the Tianji city. Sha Baofeng, the newly appointed young clan leader, had colluded with the former clan leader of the Yin Demon clan, the Yin Emperor, and caused havoc in the Tianji city. Not only did they blow up the imperial prison in the inner city of the Tianji city, but they also released tens of thousands of slaves from the first universe who had been held hostage by the Tianji clan in the imperial prison. In this complete chaos, 9 vortexes of space turbulence appeared in the industrial area around the Tianji city. The entire star area was in chaos. This was a shocking piece of news that no one had expected. Everyone was shocked beyond words. the upper echelons of the Federation, the human race, and the vanguard fleet of the Alliance of the Second Universe even thought that this news was fake. They thought that it was one of the baits used to confuse them and lure them into the enemy's trap. It wasn't until all the major powers communicated with each other and confirmed that all the secret channels in the hands of the major races and powers were in agreement that they suddenly realized that all of this was actually true. After all, it was reasonable and acceptable for one or two clan spies to be discovered and fake news to spread. However, if the entire Federation, the human race, the races of the Second Universe, and all the spies of the First Universe and even the Tianji clan were all captured, then that would be absolutely unrealistic. Soon after, this news spread throughout the three universes. Even the Tianji clan's officials issued a joint arrest warrant for the crippled young clan leader, Sha Baofeng, and the Yin Emperor in the First Universe's Starry Sky Network. This matter was finally settled. It was confirmed. The commanders of the vanguard fleet of the Second Universe's alliance were filled with regret. They beat their chests and stamped their feet. They had missed an excellent opportunity to beat a drowning dog. Unfortunately, this kind of opportunity was fleeting. If they missed it, they would never get another chance. Chapter 36-25. When he left the Tianji starfield, Yi Xian used the interstellar coordinate jump ability. The destination he chose was the black hole of life in the demon star field, which was quite far away from the Tianji star field. Ever since the Tianji race sent out a fleet to capture the Void Soldier Ladle race in the black hole of life, it had been empty. Perhaps there were some forces or races in the First Universe that wanted to use the empty black hole of life. After all, this was a unique void that was equivalent to a secret realm. Although it was called a black hole, it was different from other black holes formed in the universe. It was completely made up of Void Soldier Ladle race. The Ladle race was formed by the Void Devourer beast slowly eating away at the void. Not only did it not devour light and heat, it was filled with all kinds of void turbulence and had the characteristics of a constantly expanding black hole. Instead, because of the departure of the Void Soldier Ladle race, it stopped expanding slowly and stabilized. It was definitely a good place for a race to live. Earth. However, this was the Demonkin star region after all, and the Demonkin race was ranked in the top 3 among the slave races of the First Universe, even if they weren't the strongest. Therefore, some small races didn't even dare to think about the black hole of life. The Demon Cultivator race might have thought of this before, but ever since they formed an alliance with Yi Xian and found out about the relationship between him and the Void Soldier Ladle clan, the Demon Cultivator race gave up on the idea of developing a black hole of life and entering it. During this time, the black hole of life had always been quiet. It was a stark contrast to the turbulent situation in the Demon Star field and even the entire First Universe. It was like a quiet and peaceful paradise. After Yi Xian completed the interstellar coordinate jump and arrived at the black hole of life, he was not in a hurry to leave. After thinking for a while, he decided to set up camp in the black hole of life for the time being. Following the unforeseen events in Tianji City, the overall situation of the First Universe would obviously be greatly affected. The slaves of the First Universe, who had been held hostage by the royal family of the Tianji race, had all fled. This could not help but directly affect the plane that was erupting at the edge of the Demonkin star region. A great battle in the stars. It was impossible for Yi Xian to predict how the specific situation would develop, but he had to plan ahead. Even if the general situation of the First Universe had nothing to do with him, the Tianji clan would reveal the secret of his identity in a fit of anger. Yi Xian and Triumph City would be sent to the tip of the waves. Before all of this happened, he had to increase his cultivation as much as possible. Right now, he was at the 11th realm, the 8th level of the Mystic Light realm. He only needed a small breakthrough before he could consume the level 12 liquid and break through to the 12th level, the Void realm. Even if Yi Xian was only a Void rank 1, the overall combat strength he could display at that time would be completely different from what it was now. It was not like the difference between heaven and earth, but it would definitely cause people to raise their eyebrows. After all, Yi Xian still had a lot of potential in the various supreme treasures and powerful divine abilities he possessed. Their power would increase along with Yi Xian's cultivation base. Therefore, to Yi Xian, every small increase in his cultivation base was significant. It was definitely not just a small increase in his combat strength. If the outside world was chaotic, then so be it. According to Yi Xian's estimation, it would only take him 2 or 3 days to break through another small realm. After ending this round of closed-door cultivation, he would leave the black hole of life and investigate the situation of the first universe, as well as the identity of the planes of the three universes. The various reactions after the secret of the Void Realm was revealed. As a mystic light realm expert, Yixian was no longer an ordinary starry sky expert. He was only 4 realms away from becoming a universe realm expert. At this level, breaking through a small realm was no longer as easy as it was before. Ordinary people would only be able to break through once every few years. Even if Yixian had a huge amount of resources in his hands, it was not realistic for him to break through consecutively in just a few days. In fact, his last breakthrough was just around the corner. So, for the sake of ensuring the success of his breakthrough this time, Yixian had pondered for a moment before he withdrew a huge amount of cultivation resources from the undying world within his body. 10 level 99 colored stellar core quintessence. A drop of evil liquid. A huge piece of the corpse of a region lord. Of course, the latter was for roasting. The flesh and blood of such formidable primordial beings were precious cultivation resources. Even if they had perished countless years ago, they were still precious flesh and blood. So, even if a small amount of energy remained within them, it was extremely precious to Yixian right now. Ding! 10 level 99 colored stellar core quintessence have been discovered. Will you take them immediately? As soon as he withdrew those 10 top-grade stellar core quintessence, the familiar sound of system notifications resounded in Yixian's mind, and he immediately gave an affirmative answer. However, he didn't utilize the energy of those 10 top-grade stellar core quintessence right away, and he stored it within the Devour system instead. After that, Yixian placed the piece of flesh he'd sliced off from the corpse of the region lord into the farmer god cauldron, and then he directly activated the orange flames within the furnace volcano in the central region and started roasting it. This scene immediately alarmed the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru within the farmer god cauldron. Yixian's mind was connected to the farmer god cauldron at this moment, so the voices of the 3 women had entered his mind with extreme clarity. Time to eat. Time to eat. Wow! What an amazing act. He directly roasted it with earth and flames. I know it's definitely extremely delicious. Big scoundrel, everyone gets a share. Is there going to be a share every single day from now on? If that's the case, then the 3 of us won't be leaving and will help you train those animals locked up at the bottom of the volcano. Their voices hadn't finished resounding through the air when strands of blood and low curses that dared to be furious yet didn't dare speak faintly resounded from the depths of the furnace volcano in the farmer god cauldron. Moreover, it actually faintly revealed sobbing sounds. Yixian instantly laughed bitterly when he heard this. Looks like Ji Jinghong, Jiao Ritian, and the other almost 20 geniuses of the various clans in the second universe who were locked up within the numerous cages at the bottom of the volcano had definitely suffered a great deal from these 3 little girls. When they were captured and locked up within the cages at the bottom of the furnace volcano, Yixian hadn't searched for the cultivation resources and treasures they carried with them because there were too many of them. Moreover, Yixian's current level of vision had increased as well, so unless it was an almighty figure in the world, it was practically impossible to arouse his interest in plundering them. When the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru were taken into the farmer god cauldron by him, Yixian had given the 3 girls a certain amount of authority in order to facilitate their activities in the cauldron. Except for the sealed space at the bottom of the volcano used to store all kinds of flesh and blood ingredients, the 3 girls were very. Chapter 36-26. The corpse of a primordial being at the region lord realm still carried a formidable aura of pressure. So, not to mention roasting it, ordinary experts would be heavily injured if they just approached it. However, after it was roasted by the orange flames of the farmer god cauldron, not only had all sorts of impurities been expelled, the formidable pressure had been refined and fused into the flesh and blood, and it wasn't sharp and oppressive any longer. It was precisely because of this that Yixian was able to devour the head of that golden crow at the World Lord realm. At this moment, Yixian had no choice but to leave behind 3 portions for Xinyuan Ziying, and the others after he'd finished roasting this large piece of flesh and blood that belonged to a region lord. After that, he withdrew the largest portion from within the farmer god cauldron, and then he directly utilized his knife and fork to eat to his heart's content. After he finished eating the golden and oily region lord realm corpse, Yixian's entire body started to heat up. Now he'd recovered his human form, and coupled with the fact that he was within the black hole of life that wasn't affected by external disturbances, he wasn't able to control his body at all. The golden and oily flesh transformed into energy as soon as it entered his stomach. Waves of multicolored light surged out from within him, and it caused the myriad of pores throughout Yixian's body to glow brightly. A myriad of rays of light shot into the sky, and he simply seemed like an invincible god of war that had come from the other side of space. After that, Yixian raised his head and swallowed the drop of evil liquid that he'd prepared. In the end, he sat down cross-legged in midair and closed his eyes before he issued an order to the devouring system, and it slowly poured the energy absorbed from the 10 top-grade stellar cores into his body. At this point, his breakthrough had finally begun. Ding! Congratulations to host for breaking through in the cultivation of the vital blood of your body. Current cultivation. Perfection in the 9th rank of the mystic light realm. After an unknown period of time, when the extreme heat within Yixian's body had finally vanished, the familiar sound of the system notification resounded in his mind. He'd finally broken through. Opening his eyes, Yixian checked his body. His blood and qi were surging, and his strength had increased by a large margin. However, even though the energy within the corpse of that region lord, and the quintessence of those 10 level 99 colored stellar cores had been completely exhausted, Yixian still felt like countless cells throughout his body were being torn apart. This wasn't unfamiliar to him. It was the sign of the origin elixir of all evil tempering his body, tearing apart the shackles of his body, and unearthing the potential of his body. Although he had only ingested a single drop of all evil origin elixir this time, it was truly extraordinary, and its subsequent effects were still spreading. Yixian did not hesitate and decided to strike while the iron was hot. He swallowed a bottle of level 12 liquid and broke through to the 12th realm, the Void Realm. Even if he could only stabilize at Void Realm rank 1, he would be satisfied. Soon after, Yixian swallowed a vial of level 12 liquid and entered seclusion once more. What was different was that this time he was advancing towards another major realm, and not breaking through a minor realm within the same major realm. At the same time, in the space within the farmer god cauldron within Yixian's undying world, the golden meat roasted from the corpses of 3 region lords had been eaten a long time ago. It was the first time that the purplish warbler Duanmu Xiaocha and Zhao Qianru had enjoyed the flesh and blood of such a living being, so the effects were even more obvious. Coupled with the fact that their cultivations were inferior to Yixian, breaking through was comparatively easy. As such, this time, just by eating a large piece of roasted domain lord level meat each, the 3 girls broke through one after another. In a short period of time, their cultivations all rose by 2 small realms. After they finished cultivating, the 3 of them cheered with joy, and they were delighted to the point of jumping up and down. This scene and the entire process were seen clearly by Ji Jinghong, Zhao Ritian, and the rest who were in the prison walls at the bottom of the central region furnace volcano. These fellows all had envious expressions on their faces at this moment. However, it wasn't only because Xianyuan Ziying and the other 2 girls had advanced by 2 small stages in succession. More importantly, it was because they were envious that they could actually enjoy this level of supreme treasure meat. They were locked up at the bottom of the volcano. Every time Yixian used an orange-red flame to roast all sorts of precious meat, they were the closest witnesses. The pieces of supreme precious meat that were roasted until they were golden and dripping with oil emitted an intoxicating fragrance. Unknowingly, their appetites had long since completely fallen. Slurp. It was unknown which one of them was drooling, and it seemed like there was quite a lot of saliva, and when it was sucked back into his mouth it actually made a crisp sound. The 3 girls were alarmed, and their gazes all turned towards the prison walls at the bottom of the central region volcano, and just happened to meet the envious gazes of the 20 or so guys. Sometimes when the light of appetite and lust was ignited in the eyes, it was very difficult to distinguish between spiciness, and it was so hot staring straight at the ground, making one's heart tremble. And this time the 3 girls clearly misunderstood. They were obviously greedy, but the faint green light in their eyes made them think of a bad thing. Being stared at by 20 or so big perverts at the same time, with the temperament of the 3 girls, they were originally going to flip out. Furthermore, the former were prisoners, and they were prisoners, so the 3 of them immediately rushed to the bottom of the volcano below, shouting incessantly, Damn guys, they are really a bunch of animals. They are already prisoners, but they are still so disobedient. How dare they stare at this young miss like that? They don't want to live anymore, do they? We must teach them a good lesson. They haven't been taught a lesson for only one day. And now they are disobedient. What a bunch of wretches. In my opinion, we should just blind their eyeballs, so that they don't roll around every day, which is annoying. Play or not, blind or not. If not, all of you can change into your original form, so that this young miss can see which part of your body is more pleasing to the eye. Then cut a piece for us to roast and share, as an apology otherwise. Humph. Oh, didn't you hear? I'm talking to you, Jiao Ritian. You are obviously a big fat cow. What's the point of pretending to be a human? Show your original form immediately. This young miss is going to cut a big piece of cow meat. You don't want to move, right? Fine, roast you alive is the same. As soon as she finished speaking, Duanmu Xiaocha had already made a spell to control a wisp of orange flame, which shot toward the prison walls where Jiao Ritian was. These days, they had used this method to show off their power, which had already frightened the 20 or so young talents of the Federation of the Second Universe. Moo! Before the orange flame rushed into the prison, there was a monstrous angry moo from inside. With tears in his eyes, Jiao Ritian hurriedly showed his original form at the first time. A black strong cow about 1,000 feet in size, standing in the prison with its head down, its body full of scars. Chapter 36-27. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through the Qi and Blood Realm. Current Realm. Void Realm Level 1. As the familiar system notification rang in his mind, Yixian opened his eyes. His eyes glowed, and the system notification rang in his mind again. This time it had nothing to do with the breakthrough in his cultivation level. It was to remind Yixian that he still had a chance to use a random system ability that he had not yet used. When Yixian upgraded the Devouring system's subsidiary title to Level 5 Interstellar Raider, the benefits he gained were that from then on, the number of interstellar coordinates that Yixian could imprint on any dimension in the universe had increased from 1 to 2. There was also the halo effect that came with the title. On the basis of the previous 4 titles, Interstellar Traveler, Interstellar Adventurer, Interstellar Explorer, and Interstellar Pathfinder, a brand new system ability would be activated randomly. However, due to the various things that happened after that, Yixian didn't use this opportunity to the point that he almost forgot about it. Now that he heard the system's reminder, his eyes lit up and he immediately gave the system an instruction. Using this opportunity, he obtained a new ability of the system that was randomly selected. Power. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully activating the forging system. Soon, a short system notification rang in Yixian's mind, indicating that this opportunity had been used. The devouring system in his body had activated another ability, which meant that a new subsidiary system had been activated. However, the forging system that had just been activated caused Yixian to be stunned for a moment before frowning. Forging system? Did not sound like much. Was it forging a treasure? If that was the case, then it was too useless. Yixian already had the fusion system. He could fuse any treasure with the same type of treasure or other suitable materials to increase its level and quality. Wasn't that what the forging system meant? It was not even as good as the fusion system. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, a trace of disappointment surfaced in Yixian's heart. As expected, this was a random chance given by the system. It was cheap and not good, so giving it away for free was even less worth looking forward to. After sighing a few times, Yixian still felt a little unwilling to give up. He also felt a little hopeful. In his opinion, the devouring system was so high and mighty. Even if the system randomly activated a new auxiliary system, it shouldn't overlap with the previous system, right? This was too stingy. Could it be that this so-called forging system has some other advantages or tricks? Anyway, since it had already been activated, it wouldn't take much time to carefully study it. At most he would come up with nothing. That way he could completely give up. With that thought in mind, Yixian immediately perked up. He began to search for all the information about the forging system in the newly updated database, due to the activation of the system's new subsidiary system. He immediately began to study it in detail. Not long after, Yixian thoroughly researched all the information regarding the forging system. He was extremely excited. It was indeed different from the fusion system. Not only was it different, it was completely different. It shouldn't be called the forging system at all. It would be more appropriate to call it the personality replication system. Simply put, the function of this system was to replicate a certain artifact that Yi Xian already had. Furthermore, it was a personalized replication. There were options to keep or remove the personality. Of course, this kind of replication was not done out of thin air. It required a large amount of various materials. It felt as if these materials were used to reforge a new artifact. That was why it was called the forging system. But in fact, it was completely different in nature. How could simple forging be the same as rough replication? Not to mention a simple forging, even a complicated fusion would not be as rough and direct as the other party's replication. To give a very simple example, Yi Xian's personal small battleship, the Dongshu shuttle, was now a quasi-starry sky supreme treasure. However, to reach this level, Yi Xian had gone through a total of 7 fusions. Furthermore, he had succeeded each time before reaching this level. During these 7 fusions, he had to carefully choose the same type of artifact that could be used to carry out the fusions, or the various materials that had unique abilities or attribute effects. A total of 7 fusions. It could be said that it was exhausting and time-consuming. If there was a lack of similar type of artifact or material that could be used to carry out the fusions, then he could only wait until there was a suitable one. Only then could he carry on with the fusions. However, if he let the forging system do this, it would be different. Of course, this was under the premise that Yi Xian's Dongshu shuttle had reached the quasi-starry sky supreme treasure level after 7 fusions. If he did not have such a reference object, or rather, a model, the forging system would not be able to use it. With the Dongshu shuttle model in hand, if Yi Xian wanted to make a similar personal battleship that had completed 7 fusions and was a quasi-starry sky supreme treasure, he could just directly use the model, which was the Dongshu shuttle, and the various materials required for the forging. He could just throw them to the system. Yi Xian did not need to care about anything else. The length of time it would take was still unknown, but in the end, he would definitely be able to obtain a similar small personal battleship and complete it in one go. More importantly, this kind of duplicated forging, which was like cheating, actually had the option to be deleted, and could be customized according to one's personality. For example, if Yi Xian felt that a certain function of the Dongshu shuttle was useless, then he could just delete it during the replication forging process. As for another function, if Yi Xian felt that it was too weak and needed to be strengthened, then he could just select this option during the replication forging process and specially strengthen it. This was simply heaven-defying. Unfortunately, the more heaven-defying a system function like this was, the more stringent it would be in other aspects. The forging system that had just been activated this time was the same. Its stringent requirement was that the amount of materials required for replication forging was too terrifying. Yi Xian tried to throw the Dongshu shuttle to the forging system, then gave it a command to forge it. He also gave it access to the vast amount of resources and materials he had collected in the undying world in his body. In the end, the forging system's final evaluation almost made Yi Xian fall to the ground in shock. With the vast amount of resources collected in Yi Xian's undying world, even Star Lords would tremble in fear if they saw it. Only 4 Dongshu shuttles with identical functions could be forged. If there was a need for customization, such as deleting or strengthening a certain function, the cost would be even greater, so only 2 or 3 could be made. Chapter 36-28. After a moment of excitement, Yi Xian gradually calmed down and shook his head with a bitter smile. All this time he had never lacked any kind of resources. Furthermore, he was extraordinarily wealthy. This gave him a sense of pride, as if he was the richest man in the world. Only now, after activating the almost man-eating forging system, did he realize that he was actually still a pauper. The vast amount of resources in his undying world was only enough to create 3 to 4 Dongshu shuttles. He could not afford to use such a luxurious forging system. If Yi Xian wanted to forge a Thunder Emperor seal, the Shenong Cauldron, the ancient Desolate Inheritance Tower, or other treasures from the Desolate era like the Thunder Emperor seal, the Shenong Cauldron, or even the Desolate era's Inheritance Tower, wouldn't that be enough to bankrupt him? At the end of the day, he still had to work hard and get more resources. Otherwise, he could only take it one step at a time. He could forget about enjoying this luxury to the end. However, the forging system had already been activated. If he did not use it to create a treasure and see how it worked, Yi Xian would not be satisfied. No matter what, he had to use it at least once. Otherwise, he would be letting himself down. Thinking of this, Yi Xian gritted his teeth and began to choose from the various treasures he currently had. Treasures like the farmer god cauldron were out of the question. He could not afford to play with them, so he directly skipped them. Quasi-starry sky treasures like the Dongshu shuttles, undying glass armor, and withered demon bloodblades were also out of the question. Using so many resources just to test the effects and in the end, creating a treasure with the same function was not worth it. However, he could not just randomly create a piece of junk and give it to the forging system. That would be meaningless. In the end, Yi Xian's gaze locked onto the void battle armor. After thinking for a while, his eyes lit up. Although the void battle armor was huge, its power was mainly reflected in the tens of millions of void soldier ladles that drove it. Before it was modified, its power was reflected in the tens of millions of demon dwellers. Without the tens of millions of void soldier ladles and demon cultivator experts, it was actually not a very precious magic treasure. The current void battle armor was only at the epic star grade, which was actually quite good. For Yi Xian, this grade was just right for him to test the effects of the forging system. However, the void battle talisman was only suitable for the void soldier ladle. Yi Xian already had one, so there was no need for him to get an identical one. In any case, the forging system could be customized. Since it could be targeted to delete or strengthen a certain function, it could also be targeted to make a small change to a certain function. Also, the forging system had a very convenient function before replicating and forging a certain piece of magical equipment, which was to perform an automatic search based on the current situation and propose personalized customization suggestions to the host based on the final result of the automatic search. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian handed the void battle armor to the forging system and gave it an order to start a personalized automatic search. The results were out very quickly. What surprised Yi Xian was that there were actually two personalized forging suggestions from the system. They were the Weeping Soul battle armor and the Flowing Time battle armor. From the names of the two battle armors to be forged, it could be seen that the personalized choice targeted the driving force. For example, the Void battle armor was previously a spiritual battle armor, which was suitable for the demon dwellers to drive. Now that it had become a Void battle armor, it was suitable for the Void soldier ladle to drive. Similarly, if Yi Xian decided to forge the Weeping Soul battle armor or the Flowing Time battle armor, the driving force would also change. The demon dweller's spiritual power would not be suitable, and the Void soldier ladle would not be suitable. These two battle armors would be suitable for the Weeping Soul beast and the golden slime respectively. The Weeping Soul beast Yi Xian had captured tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts in the Weeping Soul cave on the Black Mountain Star, the main star of the Black Mountain tribe. Although he had used some of them to enhance his spiritual power, he still had a total of 40 to 50 million Weeping Soul beasts. It was more than enough to occupy one Weeping Soul battle armor. Thinking of this, Yi Xian was instantly moved. Although the resources and materials required to forge two personalized war drums were quite expensive, it was still acceptable. More importantly, Yi Xian had already witnessed the powerful might of the Spirit War Drum and the Void War Drum. Currently, he still had the effect of the Weeping Soul War Drum. He was looking forward to it. Since the Weeping Soul battle armor was driven by tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts, its power should be about the same as the spiritual battle armor. After all, Weeping Soul beasts were all made of spiritual energy, but there would definitely be differences. According to Yi Xian's estimation, compared to the spiritual battle armor, the Weeping Soul battle armor would only be stronger. Its strong point should be the Weeping Soul beast's unique Weeping Soul effect. The terrifying attack of tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts, driving the Weeping Soul battle armor would be a fatal blow to any flesh and blood life form. An attack at the level of the primordial spirit and consciousness. Thinking of this, Yi Xian did not hesitate any longer. He immediately gave the forging system the right to draw resources. In short, all the resources collected in his undying world were at the disposal of the system to forge the Weeping Soul battle armor. Everything unfolded quickly, and Yi Xian did not stop. While the forging system was forging the Weeping Soul battle armor, he began to study the Weeping Soul beasts stored in the various spatial pagodas. The spatial pagodas were originally refined by Old Devil Wenxing and provided to the Black Mountain tribe's great commander. They were specifically used to store the Weeping Soul beasts. The Weeping Soul Beasts were very unique. Normal spatial treasure would not be able to store them, and even directly store them in one's body would not work. However, after absorbing them as spiritual energy, the remaining tiny Weeping Soul Bloodhorn could be directly stored. With regards to this, Yi Xian had always been very curious. He had studied it before, but to no avail. In the end, he could only attribute it to the fact that everything in the world had its own unique characteristics. There was really no need to investigate the cause of everything, so he did not investigate further. However, now that he wanted to make use of these tens of millions of Weeping Soul Beasts and make them as obedient as the soldier Jiao tribe, once they entered the Weeping Soul battle armor, they would be able to follow Yi Xian's orders at any time. They would gather the Weeping Soul Beast's spiritual energy and launch a powerful concentrated attack. Then Yi Xian would have to study this matter again. Once. Otherwise, if these tens of millions of Weeping Soul Beasts did not listen to his orders, either all of the Weeping Soul Beast's spiritual energy would not be able to gather, or they would not be able to condense into a concentrated attack and be shot out. Chapter 36-29. The Weeping Soul Beast was a spiritual energy life form that was related to the Weeping Soul Blood Ape. The Weeping Soul Blood Ape was the supreme primordial lord. This guy was mysterious and strange. During the Primordial War, it didn't belong to the camp of the Headless Infant Corpse, nor did it belong to the camp of the Heavenly Eye. Yi Xian inherited the Heaven-Falling Bow. In the image, it was lurking in a dark corner of an abandoned planet, spying on the entire primordial galactic battlefield insidiously. This guy was definitely up to something. Perhaps the countless Weeping Soul Beasts in the Weeping Soul Cave on the Black Mountain Star had something to do with it. But that didn't matter anymore. Back then, the remnant soul of the Weeping Soul Blood Ape lived a second life and turned into a Weeping Soul Bloodhorn. Unfortunately, this Weeping Soul Blood Ape didn't manage to grow into a new Weeping Soul Bloodhorn. However, before it could grow into a new Weeping Soul Blood Ape, it met Yi Xian and was eventually refined by the Headless Infant Corpse. Today, it was transferred to the Devouring body by Yi Xian, and the Venerable Void Ladle clone through the Tower of Ancients' inheritance. It was also the body of the invincible war god that was still struggling in the territory of the human cultivators. In short, even if these Weeping Soul Beasts had some secrets, they couldn't do anything now. The source of their bloodline, the Weeping Soul Blood Ape, had been completely subdued. How could they cause trouble? Yi Xian had collected a large number of Weeping Soul Beasts and kept all the miniature Weeping Soul Bloodhorns. Now there were nearly 10 million of them. At this time, the nearly 10 million soul bloodhorns were all taken out by him, and he threw them to the Devouring system to refine them. At the same time, according to the system's requirements, Yi Xian also provided some special materials. This was similar to refining the Dongshu shuttle, the Undying Glass Armor, the Withered Demon Bloodblade and other treasures, but it was more thorough. After a short while, the refinement was completed. Tens of millions of Weeping Soul Horns and other precious materials were finally refined into a single Weeping Soul Blood Crystal. It was completely blood red and almost completely transparent, like the highest grade of blood red amber. Within it, I could faintly see a miniature Weeping Soul Blood Ape. It was exactly the same as the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, except that it was countless times smaller, only the size of a palm. Yi Xian only needed to refine this Weeping Soul Blood Crystal and place it in the core beehive node of the Weeping Soul Battle Tala. Then he would be able to use it to control the tens of millions of Weeping Soul Beasts residing in the Weeping Soul Battle Tala. He would make them obey his orders like the Void Soldier Dipper Horde and unleash a terrifying Weeping Soul Strike at any time. Coincidentally, the shape of the Weeping Soul Blood Crystal was a curved horn. Just like the horn. Yi Xian muttered in his heart as he played with it. He didn't know that the Weeping Soul Blood Crystal, which was the center of the kinetic energy, was made into such a shape, but it was gathered from the bodies of tens of millions of Weeping Soul Beasts. In the end, it would turn into a mental fluctuation that shot out through the Weeping Soul Blood Crystal. Would there be an additional amplification effect? If the answer was yes, then this Weeping Soul Battle Tala, which was about to be completed, would definitely be more terrifying than the Void Battle Tala. In addition to its Weeping Soul effect TSK, Yi Xian couldn't wait any longer. After half a day, the Weeping Soul Battle Tala was finally completed. Yi Xian checked the consumption rate of the vast amount of resources collected from the undying world in his body. Although it was still within an acceptable range, He couldn't help but feel his heart twitch. It seemed like he had to collect more resources in the future. The system really didn't dare to use it carelessly. Such a useful item, but it couldn't be used frequently. This was simply driving people crazy. Yixian definitely wouldn't be able to accept it. After shaking off these thoughts, Yixian waved his hand and brought out the completed Weeping Soul Battle Tala. In the void in front of him, a huge battle Tala with a diameter of 300,000 meters suddenly appeared before his eyes. In terms of external appearance, this Weeping Soul Battle Tala was exactly the same as the Void Battle Tala. The only difference was that the materials used were more suitable for the Weeping Soul Beast to move. The internal structure of all the honeycomb nodes and connecting pipes had also been adjusted to be more suitable for the transmission and amplification of the Weeping Soul Beast's spiritual energy. From the looks of it, these two were completely identical space-killing machines. The only difference was the color. The Void Battle Tala was completely gray. The Weeping Soul Battle Tala was completely soaked in the blood of the Weeping Soul. Seeing this scene, Yixian couldn't help but mutter. From the looks of it, the Time Battle Tala that is going to be forged later, won't it be completely made of time metal? The time metal he was talking about was the golden color of the golden slimes. Yixian had tens of millions of golden slimes in his hands. Moreover, he also had a golden slime mother nest, which was currently placed in a certain layer of the S Starfield Life Fortress. At every moment, new golden slime would be born. The substance secreted from their bodies was the same substance that formed the entire world of Life Fortress. These golden slime derivatives were the favorite nutrients for growth. Yixian had thrown 2 prime life crystals that he had won from the system's competitive missions into the mother nest twice. After the energy of the second prime life crystal was depleted, the evil spirit slime's life form underwent another great leap. They had already reached a very high level. On the backs of all the evil spirit slimes, there was an additional golden line that ran from head to tail. Moreover, on their entire bodies there was also a golden line. There were specks of golden spots on their bodies. Even the mucus secreted by their bodies had turned a faint gold color. From then on, it was no longer appropriate to call them evil spirit slimes. It would be more appropriate to call them golden slimes. At that time, Yixian was quite curious. He wanted to research whether this golden slime had any other characteristics. Perhaps he would be pleasantly surprised. However, he didn't find the time at all. Until recently, when he decided to duplicate and forge the Void Battle Talisman, he let the forging system follow the forging requirements of the Battle Talisman. Based on all of Yixian's existing resources and foundation, after an automatic search, he came up with the 2 results of the Weeping Soul Battle Talisman and the Time Battle Talisman. Only then did Yixian pay attention to the golden slime again. The reason why it was called the Time Battle Talisman, and not the Golden Battle Talisman, was because this golden slime's unique biological frequency was suspected to be related to the starry sky's time law, and it carried the power of time. Of course, the biological frequency of a single golden slime was too weak. This effect of time erosion was not obvious at all. It was so weak that it couldn't be sensed at all. However, if tens of millions of golden slime were to be like the Soldier Ladle and the Weeping Soul Beast, they would enter the Time Battle Talisman, which was completely golden in color, and gather their unique biological frequency of time attribute to launch an all-out attack. The power would definitely be heaven-defying. The law of time was originally the most mysterious law. If one didn't set foot in this field, no matter how powerful one was, they wouldn't be able to reverse time. At that time, the war of time would rumble, and it would instantly cause countless experts in the starry sky to wither away as if they had experienced tens of thousands of years in a short instant. That scene would definitely be shocking. Chapter 3630. As Yixian gave the order to forge the Flowing Time War Talisman, the vast amount of materials and resources in his undying world instantly decreased. Moreover, because the power of the Time War was clearly stronger than the Weeping Soul War, it required more special materials, rare crystals, and minerals. For example, the Star Tier Crystal and other epic grade crystals, some of which Yixian only had 3 to 5 in his hands, but this time they were cleared in the blink of an eye. All gone, all gone. This caused his heart to twitch in pain. However, when he thought about the corrosive effect of the Flowing Time War Talisman after it was activated, Yixian felt that it was all worth it. This kind of Flowing Time War Talisman might not be the only one in the 3 universes, but at least since Yixian entered the Flowing Time War Talisman, Until now, he had never encountered a similar type of treasure after entering the universe. The power of the flowing time talisman was too terrifying, especially the flowing time talisman of the universe level. It was not a domain that ordinary existences could set foot in. Compared to it, the flowing time talisman of the universe was rather ordinary. However, in reality, among the almighty existences and star lords that Yi Xian had come into contact with, there were only a few who had a superficial understanding of the flowing time talisman of the universe. As the forging of the flowing time war talisman began, Yi Xian began to ponder about another problem. That was the activation of the flowing time war talisman. There were still tens of millions of golden slimes. They could be directly transferred over from the Wildstar Life Fortress. After all, there was a golden slime mother nest there, and new golden slimes were constantly being born. Yi Xian moved tens of millions of golden slimes, and after a period of time this number would be increased again. It would be replenished again. However, there was another problem. That was the activation of the core. Yi Xian had the two 8-star king ladles to guard the core of the flowing time war talisman, and he also had the void essence crystal to control it. The Weeping Soul Bloodhorn originally had this problem, but now with the Weeping Soul Blood Crystal that was refined by the Devouring system, Yi Xian placed it in the core of the flowing time war talisman. There was no problem in controlling the tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts in the flowing time war talisman. However, the flowing time war talisman was different. All golden slimes were of the same level, and there were no kings among them. Yi Xian did not have the time origin crystal that contained the flowing time essence crystal could be used to control them. Thus, the activation of the core of the flowing time war talisman was empty. As a result, the battle claws of time couldn't be used at all. Even if the time biological frequency of tens of millions of golden slimes could be gathered together, it couldn't be shot out in a concentrated manner. There were only two ways to solve this problem. The first was to obtain a time origin crystal similar to the Weeping Soul Blood Crystal. However, that kind of thing was extremely rare. Even Yi Xian had never heard of it. It was something that could only be found by chance. Now, it was basically impossible to even think about it. The other method was to obtain a Slime King ladle similar to the 8-star King ladle, and let it guard the core of the flowing time war talisman. Yi Xian would have to completely subdue it. Otherwise, if it did not listen to his orders, it would be a waste of effort. This method had a certain possibility of being realized. The reason why there was only one mother nest that specialized in reproduction among the golden slimes was a high-level existence of this race, while all the other golden slimes were of the same level, was because they had always been treated as a battery after they were born. They were like batteries, secreting a special liquid for the countless micromolecules of the world's slimes to absorb. Over time they would die. At the same time, new golden slimes would be born, repeating the cycle of life and death. Although there was always a certain number of golden slimes, there was no single golden slime that could receive special care, apart from the overall increase in quality due to the absorption of prime life crystals. What Yi Xian needed to do now was to obtain a golden slime and nurture it on its own. He would find a way to raise its level of life as quickly as possible, creating a slime king and subduing it. Through it, he would be able to lead the tens of millions of golden slimes in the flowing time talisman. As soon as he thought of it, Yi Xian immediately picked out the largest and most active golden slime from the life stronghold. After a moment of hesitation, he gritted his teeth and took out a drop of all evil origin liquid. When it came to raising the level of life and promoting the evolution of life forms, the all-evil origin elixir was the most heaven-defying of all the resources in Yi Xian's possession. After all, it was refined using the 9-colored flesh paste in the Netherworld Cauldron as its raw material. The 9-colored flesh paste was also a mixture of the remains, blood, and flesh of many powerful primordial life forms. From this, one could see how terrifying the quality of the all-evil origin elixir was. This was something that even those terrifying existences from the primordial era, who were now hibernating to recover from their injuries, needed. Some existences even only had a single drop per year. Now Yi Xian had directly tossed a drop to this golden slime, greatly raising its level of life in a short period of time. This was something that was set in stone. At this moment, as Yi Xian took out the drop of all evil origin elixir and let it float in front of him, the golden slime that was only a meter long and about the size of an average void soldier's ladle immediately began to tremble. Its glowing golden eyes stared fixedly at the drop of all evil origin elixir. It was not afraid. Instead, it was excited. It was eager, extremely eager. Yixian could clearly sense these emotional fluctuations. As a matter of fact, he even had the misconception that the golden slime was trying to curry favor with him, or even beg him. Its objective was to devour this drop of all evil origin elixir that was endlessly tempting to it. This greatly roused Yixian's spirits. He was even more confident now. Without any hesitation, he waved his hand and poured the drop of all evil origin elixir into the golden slime's forehead. It vanished in a flash, disappearing into the golden slime's forehead. As the drop of all evil origin elixir entered its body, the golden slime shuddered violently. The transformation of its level of life immediately began vigorously. It was so intense that even Yixian leapt in fright. He subconsciously took a few steps back, because he was afraid of the great effects of the drop of all evil origin elixir. The golden slime was unable to endure it. It would be depressing if it exploded and was covered in filth. The golden slime was originally a faint golden color, and only its abdomen had a dazzling golden line. However, at this moment the golden line was expanding at a visible rate. In the blink of an eye, its entire body had become a dazzling golden color. Subsequently, a golden line appeared where the golden line was at its abdomen. A violet gold line. Although this purple gold thread did not rapidly spread out like the golden thread before and completely covered his body, it extended out countless purple gold threads and gradually spread out. In the end, it covered his entire body and formed a layer of dense purple gold patterns that were like countless mysterious runes. During this process, the purple gold pattern that covered his entire body. During this process, the golden slime's body was ceaselessly expanding. In a short few minutes, when its body was around 10 meters tall, a powerful aura rumbled out from its body. Shockingly, it was the great figure of the universe. Yixian was shocked to the point his mouth was agape. His mind was thunderous. Chapter 36-31. A sound that sounded like the cry of a baby came out of the mouth of the purple gold slime that was floating in the void ahead. At the same time, the powerful aura of a universe almighty enveloped Yixian's entire body. It faintly revealed a hint of ferociousness. Moreover, the purple gold light that burst out of its eyes clearly revealed greed and a sense of threat. It was obvious that this guy hadn't had enough, and wanted another drop after tasting the sweetness. From a golden slime that hadn't even reached the black hole realm, it had grown into a purple gold slime that had reached the universe realm in such a short time. Its body had even grown from 1 meter to 10 meters tall, and its entire body was covered in purple gold runes that looked like runes. It looked extremely mysterious. One had to admit that the effects of this drop of all evil origin elixir were truly amazing. It was indeed heaven-defying. However, it was obviously far from enough. The universe realm was only the 15th great realm in the universe. As far as Yixian knew, there were star lords, region lords, and sector lords after that. Obviously, this purple gold slime wanted to continue growing. However, that was obviously impossible, at least not for the time being. Because one universe slime was already enough for Yixian. Moreover, it hadn't been subdued by him, so how could Yixian continue to help it grow and increase its ferocity? Besides, this guy didn't look like a nice guy at all. He had just given it a great fortune, and now it was threatening him. It was turning hostile faster than Hongdou Lifeng. This kind of thing definitely wouldn't be useful if he didn't teach it a lesson. With that thought in mind, Yixian's face immediately darkened. He sneered and scolded. "You bastard. You want to turn on me after receiving benefits, right? So what if you're a universe almighty? Do you believe that I can destroy you in minutes?" As he spoke, Yixian had already guided a wisp of the sector lord aura from the remains of the one-legged golden crow in the Shenong cauldron. At the same time, he waved his hand and released a dozen drops of all evil origin elixir, which floated in front of him. The moment the terrifying might of a sector lord appeared, the universe slime in the void ahead immediately retreated. The universe slime that was originally enveloping Yixian retreated like a tide. Immediately after, when the dozen drops of evil origin elixir entered its line of sight, the cosmos slime's eyes instantly flickered with purple light, and its rapidly retreating figure came to a halt. However, even though the strand of world lord pressure that had been drawn out by Yixian vanished in the blink of an eye, and even the dozen drops of evil origin elixir were quickly put away once more, The universe slime in space a few dozen kilometers ahead continued to float there. It didn't dare make any sudden movements, yet it was unwilling to leave. In the end, a wave of emotions, similar to the initial fawning to the point of almost begging, carefully extended towards Yixian. Under Yixian's coercion and enticement, the other party finally submitted to his fate. From now on, you will help me lead the tens of millions of golden slime hordes. You must obey my orders without fail. There will naturally be benefits for you in the future. I will occasionally provide you with a drop of that evil origin elixir depending on the situation. Greatly satisfied, Yixian nodded. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. In the end, he threatened, "If you don't listen to me, you can try. Since I have the ability to nurture you, I also have the ability to erase your existence." It was also at this moment that a familiar system notification sounded in his mind. The war cry of time had finally been completed. With a wave of his hand, the void war cry and the war cry of time were summoned by Yixian at the same time. They lay across the void together with the weeping soul war cry that he had summoned earlier. The three war cries were lined up in a row. Their appearance was the same, but their colors were different. The gray void war cry, the blood-red weeping soul war cry, the golden war cry of time. Looking at the three great weapons of mass destruction, Yixian was filled with pride. At this moment there were already tens of millions of void soldiers in the void war cry, but the other two war cries were still empty. Yixian didn't hesitate any longer. He immediately sent all of the weeping soul beasts into the weeping soul warship. Then he moved tens of millions of golden slimes out of the Starfield Life Fortress and entered the thousands of beehive nodes of the Time War. After doing all this, Yixian turned to look at the universe realm purple gold slime floating in the void. The other party was clearly hesitating. Its intelligence wasn't low, and it was currently weighing the pros and cons. Yixian didn't rush it. He had decided that if this universe realm purple gold slime really refused and turned to leave, Yixian would definitely kill it at all costs. In the end, the purple gold slime didn't disappoint Yixian. Or rather, it couldn't resist the allure of the all-evil origin fluid. Just now, Yixian had casually released a dozen drops, so he obviously had a lot in stock. As long as it behaved well, he could trust him to give it a drop from time to time in the future. With such expectations, the purple gold slime's figure flickered and turned into a purple gold light, entering the core of the war cry of time's honeycomb nodes. At this point, the three war cries were all ready, and Yixian could release either one of them or all of them at any time. If it was the latter, the three war cries could release a terrifying power when fired at the same time. Even Yixian didn't dare to imagine it now. Even if he was facing a Star Lord, it wasn't impossible to kill him in one shot. It's been a few days since I secluded myself in the black hole and forged the war cries. I don't know what's going on outside. It's time for me to go out and take a look. While mumbling to himself, Yixian waved his hand and stored the three war cries into his undying world. Then he rushed to the exit of the black hole. Before he left the heavenly mystery continent, Yixian had stolen 3 of Di's clones, including Di Xiaofeng's and Sha Baofeng's. He had refined a total of 9 electronic consciousnesses, whose mark of the heavenly mystery race had been erased. If nothing went wrong, 3 of the 9 electronic consciousnesses would enter the 3 bodies of Di's clones, and Yixian would have 3 more clones. Even if they weren't Star Lords, there was still hope for them to reach the universe state. He had planned to implement this matter before he left, but it seemed that the forging of the Weeping Soul war cries and the war cries of time had taken up a lot of his time, so this matter would have to be put on hold for the time being. After all, although he had completely refined the 9 electronic consciousnesses in his hands and erased all the marks related to the heavenly mystery race, he hadn't handed over the 3 bodies of Di's clones to the system for a comprehensive inspection and refinement. What if something had been done to the 3 bodies, leaving behind some sort of secret or backup plan? Once the electronic consciousnesses chosen by Yixian entered the bodies, it was very likely that an unexpected accident would happen. Chapter 36-32. A few days later, the vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan led by Yarrow had just arrived at the central area of the Fiend Star Zone. The demonic Emperor planet was not far ahead of them. After all, it was a 3,000-meter-long star-level battleship, fortress, and stronghold. There were more than 10,000 of them in total. It would take at least a few days to get here from the front line of the Fiend Star Zone. However, at this moment the entire fleet was gradually slowing down, as if they were about to stop. In the command cabin on the top floor of the Expulsion flagship fortress, Commander Yarrow had a solemn expression on his face. He furrowed his brows and fell into deep thought. Right now, his only thought was to immediately return to the Tianji star field. After all, Tianji City was in chaos, and the situation in the first universe was different. Now, there was a possibility that all the slave races would rebel against the Tianji race. He was merely leading a vanguard fleet to wander around the first universe, but he could be surrounded at any time. Dumplings. However, to return to the Tianji star zone, he had to leave the Fiend star zone first, and the demonic Emperor planet was the only way. But now, more than 10 of the Fiend Imperial uncles who had been detained for generations had returned to the demonic Emperor planet. Among the slave races in the first universe, the Fiend star zone was ranked in the top 3 in terms of overall combat strength. Now that all the races were about to rebel against the Tianji clan, would they let them go? This was exactly what Yarrow was worried about. However, behind him, in the direction of the front line of the Fiend star zone, the allied forces of the second universe had started to chase after him. The situation was not good for Yarrow. There was a tiger in front of him, and there was a wolf behind him. When he thought about how this lousy commander of his had not fought a single battle after taking office, and only cared about cleaning up the mess, Yarrow had the urge to bang his head against the wall and kill himself. Comparisons were odious. Compared to Sha Baofeng, he was so pathetic. Sir Yarrow, what are you worried about? Right at this moment, Chanaz walked over with a smile on his face full of concern. You're so lucky. Even the Star Lord didn't kill you with one slap. Just like that traitor Sha Baofeng, you're alive and kicking again in half a month. Yarrow frowned and his face was full of disgust. You're really a scourge who lives for 1,000 years. You're right, I am indeed a scourge, but 1,000 years isn't enough. The corners of Chanasi's mouth curled into a strange smile that could make one ponder. Before he finished speaking, he had already made a move. Since you are troubled and don't know how to make a decision, why don't I help you make a decision? Boom! Before he finished speaking, a terrifying and majestic oppressive aura swept out from his body. It immediately bound Yiluo's body, causing him to be unable to move. The latter was only in the 12th Grand Realm, the Void Realm. Now that the crystal life seed in Chanaz's body had awakened and taken over Chanaz's body, it was equivalent to Old Ghost Wenxing being reborn. With the cultivation of the 14th Grand Realm, the early stage of the Cosmic Light Realm, suppressing Yiluo was a piece of cake. Aren't you investigating? This sudden turn of events shocked Yiluo. He seemed to have realized something, and his expression changed abruptly. Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, his body had gone limp. You will also become a traitor of the Heavenly's legacy race, because this old man has this need. The corners of Chanasi's mouth curled into a cruel smile. An invisible crystal consciousness extended from his body and drilled into Yiluo's forehead. He was refining just like how Yixian used the Devouring system to refine the electronic consciousness of Sha Baofeng, Emperor Xiaofeng, and the others. However, as the clone of the mechanical core, Old Ghost Wenxing understood the electronic consciousness of the Heavenly's legacy race too well. Even without the help of the Devouring system, he could still do it easily. At this point, he erased the imprint of the Heavenly's legacy race in Yiluo's consciousness, and turned him into an electronic clone, outside of his own crystal consciousness. A few minutes later, Yarrow opened his eyes and got up from the ground expressionlessly. He stood next to Chanaz respectfully with his hands behind his back. He was as obedient as a loyal dog, waiting for his orders. In the future, you will still be Master Yiluo, and I will just be a flatterer who fawns over you. However, you cannot go to the Heavenly's legacy city. Find a reason to stay in the Demon Dweller Star area. At this time, Chanasi's face was already cold. He glanced at Yiluo, who was standing respectfully with his head lowered, and turned to leave. If there is no other choice, learn from Sha Baofeng. Betray the Heavenly's legacy race and cooperate with the Demon Dwellers. In short, you have to stay here until this old man waits for that brat to come to me. Demon Imperial Star. Inside the royal palace of the Demon Imperial City, Grand Elder Mo and more than 10 Demon Dweller royal uncles had returned safely a few days ago. At this time they were gathered together with Demon Emperor Mo Wentian, the current royal uncle Mo Qigong, and a few old monsters of the demon dweller race who had not appeared for a long time to discuss important matters. Demon Emperor Mo Wentian, royal uncle Mo Qigong, and the others were still in shock about everything that had happened in the Heavenly's legacy city. Although they had confidence in Yixian, and felt that he would most likely be able to rescue all the demon dweller royal uncles who had been imprisoned in the demon dweller race this time, Yixian had made such a huge move. However, the commotion that Yixian caused in the end was so great that not only were all of the captured members of the royal families of the first universe expelled from the imperial prison, but even the imperial prison was blown up. The entire heavenly secret city was in chaos. However, no matter what, they couldn't imagine it. They could never have imagined, if it wasn't for the fact that all of this had already become a fact. Mo Wentian and Mo Qigong, and the others wouldn't have dared to believe that Yixian just by himself had completely messed up the situation in the first universe in such a short period of time. Without a doubt, as the slaves of the royal family who had been imprisoned by the Heavenly's legacy race returned to their respective races, the situation that the Heavenly's legacy race was facing was unprecedentedly severe. Coupled with the approach of the allied army of the second universe, even if they wanted to change all of this and send troops to conquer the slave races, they were powerless. At least they would not be able to do so in a short time. For the demon dweller race, they had originally thought that after the royal uncles who had been held hostage by the Heavenly's legacy race were successfully rescued, the entire demon dweller race would have to face pressure from the Heavenly's legacy city. Even if the rescued royal uncles did not appear in the demon imperial city, once the Heavenly's legacy race questioned them about this matter, the demon dweller race would have to give an explanation no matter what. But now the situation was completely different. The Heavenly's legacy race had been thrown to the back of their minds. At least they did not have to worry about it in the near future. Now the problem that the higher-ups of the demon dweller race were considering was how to unite the slave races of the first universe to face the approaching demon dweller star region's frontline battle. And the allied army of the second universe was coming. In addition, there was also the Heavenly's legacy race's vanguard fleet that had just arrived at the edge of the demon dweller star region, and seemed to want to cross the border and return to the Heavenly's legacy city. Chapter 36-33. No matter how one looked at it, the vanguard fleet of the Tianji race had at least 10,000 stellar-level ships, large and small fortresses, and fortresses of all sizes. At this time they were all at full speed, and when they arrived at the Demon Emperor planet, the entire defense circle of the Demon Emperor planet immediately tensed up. Demon Guard 1, Demon Guard 2, and the star docks of the Demon Emperor planet, a large number of battleships set out and spread out, as if the entire race was welcoming the arrival of the enemy. However, the subsequent development took a turn of events, and everyone's eyes fell to the ground. The commander of the vanguard fleet, the core upper echelon of the Tianji race, the second most talented of the younger generation, actually walked out of the flagship expulsion almost alone and headed toward the Demon Emperor planet. Behind him, only the commander of the Demon Emperor guards, Shanas, who had left with Yixian not long ago, followed. What? Alliance? Cooperation? Or even surrender to the demon race? After a while, when the upper echelons of the demon race heard Yerua's words, the current imperial uncle Mo Qigong immediately exclaimed in surprise. He stared straight at Yerua and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Aren't you going back to Tianji City? Don't forget, you are the younger generation of the Tianji race. The publicly acknowledged second most talented existence. Didn't Sha Baofeng, who threw me 8 streets away, betray the Tianji race? He even caused such a big commotion. Now that the situation of the first universe has changed, the Tianji race's luck is about to run out. Only a fool will walk the same path as them. You also said that the younger generation has their own ideas. So we have to keep up with the times. At this time, Yerua was equivalent to Old Man Wenxing's electronic consciousness clone, and his consciousness had long been completely affected. In the face of this situation with his cunning, it was completely nothing. He responded with ease and spoke frankly with assurance. He waved his hand and said, "Do you think I'm born with milk?" In short, in my opinion, the great luck of the first universe basically has nothing to do with the Tianji race. It will fall into the hands of the top 3 slave races. The reason why I chose the Demonkin race was partly because the fleet under my command is in this star field, and I can't pass without forming an alliance with you. Partly, it was Brother Chinaska's persuasion that made me grit my teeth and make the decision. All in all, my fleet will not enter the inner defense circle of the 3 stars of the Nephilim Emperor, but will deploy defenses outside the 3-star defense circle. As long as we join hands, we will be able to resist the first wave of attacks from the coalition army of the second universe that is hot on our heels and even force them to retreat. Then, I'll be able to buy some time to cooperate with the other slave races in the nearby star areas and form a solid alliance. Then, I'll have the foundation and strength to compete for the position of overlord of the first universe. It had to be said that Yi Luo's words were very pertinent. Whether it was Mo Qigong, the Devil King Mo Wentian, or great-grandfather Mo, none of them could find fault with it. Their fleet did not enter the inner defense circle of the Demon Emperor 3 stars, and only set up defenses on the periphery. Moreover, they immediately faced the incoming Second Universe Coalition army together with you. They only hoped that after repelling them, they would be able to buy a certain amount of buffer time to allow the demon tribe to unite horizontally and vertically with some slave races in the nearby star field. Reaching a consensus and forming an alliance, to be honest, even if this alliance won the general trend in the future and became the new overlord of the first universe at that time, it would be the demon race who would be in charge. They would just drink a little soup, but now they had thrown out all their battleships and put their lives on the front line. This kind of deal was simply impossible to find. In the end, after thinking for a while and confirming that they could not find any suspicious points, the upper echelons of the demon tribe exchanged glances and could only shake their heads and sigh. The thinking of young people is indeed advancing with the times. We are old and can't understand. But it's not completely incomprehensible. The Tianji clan is basically done for this time. Boy, you are a smart person. Yes, follow our demon tribe to fight for the world. Although the one who takes the peach in the end may not be you, at least, it is much better than being annihilated by the giant wheel of history together with the Tianji clan. At this point, the demon tribe had basically accepted Yi Luo's surrender, and the latter did not go back on his words and did not move. He immediately ordered more than 10,000 battleships outside the inner defense circle of the Demon Emperor 3 stars to turn around and point their cannons at the star path they came from, which was the place where the pursuers were about to appear. The front line of the demon tribe starfield. At the same time, a large number of battleships also sailed out of the inner defense circle of the Demon Emperor 3 stars, and mixed with the vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan that had just surrendered, building a void defense line that stretched for millions of miles. As soon as the allied forces of the second universe arrived, thousands of cannons were immediately fired, opening the curtains of the first battle in space after the big change in the first universe. When Yi Luo successfully surrendered to the demon tribe under the control of Old Devil Wenxing, it was also when the Tianji main city activated its second battle form. It turned into a terrifying super fortress with a diameter of 1 million meters and entered the wormhole at the edge of the first universe. From then on, it completely migrated and left the plane of the first universe, outer space, and with the departure of the Tianji fortress and the disappearance of the plane of the first universe, the star network signal of the first-level star network of the plane that originally covered the vast star field of the first universe finally disappeared completely. As the overlord of the first universe, the Tianji clan's core of the first-level star network of the star network that covered the entire plane was the immortal-level star superbrain inside the Tianji city. There were only 2 immortal-level star superbrains in the 3 universes. One was in the immortal dynasty of the human race's science and technology camp. That immortal-level superbrain built the first-level star network of the third universe. Even the Federation network of the Thousand Luo Federation headquarters was attached to it. The other one was the immortal-level star superbrain in the Tianji main city of the first universe. With the departure of the Tianji main city from this plane, the central signal of the first universe's first-level star network was cut off by the universe plane barrier. Then, the first-level star network of this plane was naturally completely paralyzed in an instant. Since then, all the star fields in the first universe, except for the neighboring star fields that could still communicate with each other within a certain distance, all the star fields and races that were too far away from each other were cut off directly from each other. In other words, the entire first universe's plane had degenerated from the previous state of real-time communication to the current state of regional real-time communication. The consequences of the lack of information, or the inability to achieve real-time smooth communication, were very difficult to predict. At the very least, the thousands of races that lived in this plane could no longer communicate with each other at any time like before. The War of the Warring States of the First Universe. The era of heroes had arrived in full swing. Chapter 36-34. In today's flourishing era in the starry sky environment, if the information exchange of a star field was not smooth, the result would be a small area of unease, and if the information exchange of an entire universe plane was not smooth, the result would be a large area of panic and chaos. Under normal circumstances, it was already like this, not to mention that before the information exchange was suddenly interrupted, almost all the major races in the first universe had received a piece of shocking news that was like a heavy bomb to them. The demon race had colluded with the Tianji clan, and they were in cahoots. This was not hearsay. Before the signal of the Level 1 Starry Sky main network of the first universe was cut off, the information received by the servant clans included some video information. It clearly showed that the vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan led by Yi Luo was outside the Demon Emperor planet, fighting against the demon race. The live scene of the fleet's mixed defense. The facts were all there. There was no doubt about it, and there was no way to refute it. After this news was confirmed, the angry roars of some supreme beings and star lords sounded one after another in the major star fields of the first universe. Basically, they were all the upper echelons of the royal families who had just been tricked out of the Tianji Inner City's emperor prison not long ago. Especially the giant ferocious clan and some other clans with deep servility, they did not want to rebel against the Tianji clan at all. At this time they were even more resentful. They had a sense of grief and indignation that they had been used as a stepping stone by the demon race. Demon race, you are too shameless, too shameless. Conspiracy. There's a conspiracy. There's definitely a conspiracy. Grand Duke Missouri, what a great scheme. That side just tricked us out of the emperor prison, and here they turned around and sold all their cellmates. Damn it, they're simply not human. I'm so wronged. This old man was deceived. Tricks, it's all tricks. This old man only understands now. Ruthless. Roar. Almost all the slave races in the first universe were furious. Immediately after, except for a few weaker races, more than half of the other races sent out more or less fleets and headed towards the demon race star field. In their opinion, the demon race had indeed gone too far this time. It's fine if you want to curry favor with the Celestials' legacy race in order to rise up, but we're all fellow sufferers, so you can't do this. They were clearly stepping on the heads of the other races to climb up. As they climbed, they were also ruthlessly stepping on the heads of the other races. This was the rhythm of trampling all the other races to the bottom of the water and drowning them alive. In short, such actions had already aroused public anger, and the general trend was irresistible. Such a shameless race. The slave races of the entire first universe should join forces to kill them. Regarding all of this, the demon-human race was completely in the dark, completely unaware. Today, in the first universe, the signal of the Level 1 Starry Sky main network covering the entire plane was cut off. The Demon Emperor Star could only get in touch with a few slave races around the demon domain, and these races were obviously not on good terms with the demon race. The policy of befriending those far away and attacking those near them was also applicable in the Starry Sky environment. Not to mention that the Demon Emperor Star didn't take the initiative to contact these races. Even if they did, they might not tell the truth. They were all waiting for the fleets of the other slave races from the other Starry Sky main networks to arrive, and then the fleets of these races would form an allied force to attack the Demon Emperor Star. At the same time, the allied forces of various races from the second universe also arrived at the Devil Emperor Star area. The soldiers were stationed in front of the city and spread out in the void. The fleet was majestic and mighty, and the line of defense extended for millions of miles. A large part of the void of the universe was covered. The allied forces were led by 9 races: the Blood Dragon clan, the Cyan Rock clan, the Warrior Lion clan, the Inji clan, the Barbarian Bull clan, the Golden Eagle clan, the Colorful Python clan, the Greedy Wolf clan, and the Tree Spirit clan. The fleets of these 9 races were located in the center of the defense line, and the fleets of the other races were on the 2 sides of the defense line. Up until now, only one battle had broken out in this intergalactic war on the level of the universe plane. In the opening battle, the allied fleets of various races from the Federation of the Second Universe suffered a great loss, and even a few supreme beings of heaven and earth were killed. Although a Star Lord tried to help, in the end he was scared off by Sha Baofeng. the young master of the Tianji clan. All of this had been spread out, and countless people in the three universes knew about it. For the races in the allied forces of the second universe, this was a disgrace. Not only the commanders of the vanguard fleets and the old masters in charge of the vanguard fleets, but also the higher-ups of the races in the base camp in the rear. He had no face left, it was too shameful. But now, the situation in the first universe had changed abruptly. The Tianji clan had an accident. Sha Baofeng, the young master of the Tianji clan, who had just been conferred a title by the Line of Fire, turned against the Tianji clan on the spot when he returned to the Tianji city to accept the conferment ceremony. Even the imperial prison inside the Tianji city was pardoned by him, and then he directly blew it up. After this matter was confirmed, the higher-ups of various races in the allied forces of the second universe were very happy and felt that they had vented their anger. Some people who were gnashing their teeth at Sha Baofeng immediately changed their impression of him. They felt that this guy was too cute and pleasing to the eye no matter how they looked at him. It was really strange. Yes, why didn't they notice it before? There were even some people who were secretly vigilant, feeling that this was the birth of another devil incarnate. This guy's actions were enough to prove that not only was he a monstrous talent, but his temperament and means were also not inferior to young Master Linghu and young Master Netherworld. They were all lawless masters. The day before, he was fighting against the races of the Second Universe Federation at the front line of the Demonkin Star area, and the entire allied forces of the Second Universe were suppressed by him. He was definitely the hero of the Tianji clan. As soon as he turned back to the Tianji clan, he immediately turned his nest upside down. This kind of thing was impossible for ordinary people to do, let alone actually do it. They didn't even dare to think about it. Such an existence couldn't be provoked. They had to avoid him if they saw him in the future. He was definitely a devil incarnate. But now everything was fine. That brat had rebelled against the Tianji clan, and it was likely that he wouldn't show his face for a while. And now, the situation in the first universe was in chaos. Although the slave races hadn't made a clear stand against the Tianji clan, this matter was basically set in stone. The entire first universe plane was now in chaos. The true period of chaos was about to arrive. For the allied forces of the second universe, this was definitely a great opportunity that could only be encountered but not sought. Previously, their purpose was only to use the excuse of starting a war with the Tianji clan to push the front line forward until they reached the source of all evil star area. Then, they would stop and follow the instructions of the clan's ancestors. Explore and even occupy the source of all evil. Chapter 36-35. Even though it was only a vanguard, the allied forces of the various races of the second universe still gathered millions of battleships. However, in the first battle at the front of the demon domain, the various battleships, fortresses, and even fortresses that had been destroyed by the young patriarch of the heavenly fate race's hidden great killing weapon, the Spirit War Talisman, had destroyed all kinds of battleships, fortresses, and even fortresses. There were nearly 200,000 battleships. Now this allied force only had 800,000 battleships. However, the number of slave races in the first universe had reached nearly 1,000. When the total strength of more than 1,000 races was added together, it was definitely an astronomical figure. Even so, the various races of the Federation in the second universe were determined to seize half of the first universe in one fell swoop, while the Tianji clan was at its weakest. They would then divide it among the various races of the Federation and establish interstellar colonies. After this decision was made, on the other side of the wormhole at the front of the demon domain, the follow-up fleet of the races of the Second Universe Federation had begun to gather. Soon they would pass through the wormhole and arrive. Right now, the vanguard fleet of the Second Universe Coalition Army, which had a total of about 800,000 soldiers, had received the latest order not long ago. It was to completely take down the first obstacle before this expedition, which was the demon race, regardless of everything else. Either annihilate this race, or drive the demon race out of this star field. In short, after the second battle, the entire demon domain had to be swept clean and completely controlled by the Second Universe Alliance Army. Although the demon race was powerful and ranked in the top 3 among the slave races of the first universe in terms of overall combat strength, even so, their total strength was only hundreds of thousands of battleships. After all, the total number of the demon race was only tens of millions, and they were not like the Tianji clan. A single clansman could control a large number of intelligent robots. The number of clansmen limited the size of the demon race's fleet. Although the Tianji clan's vanguard fleet was also on the outer defense line of the Demon Emperor's star, it was only a scale of more than 10,000 battleships. In the overall situation of the battle, it did not play much of a role. In short, in this battle, the races of the Second Universe Federation were full of confidence, and they were determined to take down the Demon Emperor's star. The great battle soon began. The 800,000 battleships of the Second Universe fired their cannons at the same time. The entire void was filled with dazzling fireworks. Countless energy light pillars of different sizes shot forward and intertwined into a giant net of destruction, covering the outer defense line of the 3 stars of the Nephilim Emperor. On the outer defense line, in addition to the 10,000 Tianji clan's vanguard fleet led by Yi Luo, there were more than 400,000 battleships of the demon race. All the battleships activated their energy shields at the first moment. At the same time, some large fortresses with a diameter of 100,000 meters activated the Void Oscillator, creating a chaotic void barrier area in front of the outer defense line to prevent the enemy's battleships from activating space jumps and launching suicide attacks. 400,000 versus 800,000, the disparity in the number of battleships between the two sides was too great. The 400,000 battleships of the demonic Emperor 3 stars had been suppressed from the very beginning. Battleships were being destroyed at every moment. They were no match for the enemy at all. It was only a matter of time before they were defeated. In the face of all this, the higher-ups of the demon race in the inner defense line of the 3 stars of the demon emperor behind the outer defense line were worried. At this time, a higher-up of the demon race in charge of the demon satellite 2 suddenly sent a message. From behind the 3 stars of the demon emperor, in the direction of the inner void of the first universe, huge fleets of the servant races were coming from all directions. There were at least 1 million of them. At least half of the thousands of servant races in the first universe had sent out a fleet. Right now they had gathered into a powerful alliance army, heading toward the demon emperor star to jointly suppress the demon race. The demon emperor Mo Wentian was overjoyed, thinking that reinforcements had come. With the scale of 400,000 battleships of the demon race and the million-strong alliance army of the servant races coming from behind, it would not be a problem to swallow the 800,000 vanguard fleet from the second universe in one fell swoop. However, before the higher-ups of the demon race could recover from this surprise, the million-strong alliance army from the inner void of the first universe behind them stopped steadily in the void thousands of miles away. Then, led by the fleet commanders of a few relatively powerful slave clans, the slave fleets all declared their stance and shouted at the 3 stars of the Nephilim Emperor through the directional broadcast system of the flagship of the fortresses, waging a war against them. Demon race, the time for your destruction has come. Yes, this time the overall situation of the first universe is in chaos, and you demon race are the culprits. First, you deceived all the hostages of the royal families of our races out of the imperial prison, putting our races in a disadvantageous situation, and then you immediately turned around to curry favor with the Tianji clan. This is the rhythm of killing our races. We will never agree to this. Now all the races have sent troops and formed an alliance army to suppress. Demon race, you are doomed to die for your unjust deeds. Your retribution has come. As these voices of suppression came from afar through the directional sound transmission equipment, they resounded in the void. All the demon race clansmen around the 3 stars of the demon emperor were dumbfounded. Even in front of the outer defense line, in front of the galactic battlefield, in the second universe's allied army, the high-ranking commanders of the big races heard these voices. After being stunned for a few seconds, they were all overjoyed. This was really a pleasant surprise. They didn't expect the situation in the first universe to be so chaotic. The demon race had become the target of public criticism, and the million-strong alliance army in the void behind them had actually come to suppress them. Now, the demon race was simply being attacked from the front and the back. There was no doubt that they would be able to take them down in one go. As long as they could take down the demon race and completely occupy the entire demon domain, the mission of the Vanguard fleet would be completed. They would immediately be able to use the 3 stars of the demon emperor as the front line, changing from offense to defense, and quietly waiting for the reinforcements of the second universe to arrive. At that time, as long as the reinforcements of the other races arrived, The million-strong army of the First Universe's servant races in the void tens of millions of miles away from the demon domain was just a group of chickens and dogs. In the face of the invasion of the Outerverse plane, they could fight back in their own nest. What was there to fear from such an enemy? Soon the vanguard fleet commanders of the 9 races of the Second Universe, led by the Blood Flood Dragon clan, issued orders to attack with all their strength. No matter what, at all costs, they had to take down the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor as soon as possible. The situation deteriorated in an instant. Being attacked from the front and the back, the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor were in danger, including the Demon Emperor Mo Wentian, the current Imperial Uncle Mo Qigong, and the Imperial Uncle Mo who had just returned to the clan. All the previous generations of Imperial Uncles had no idea and were completely in a mess. Chapter 36-36. Yarrow, what are you waiting for? It's all because of you that the slave races are attacking us. The 3 stars of the demonic emperor are under attack. Don't you have anything to say? You won't be able to survive once the demons are destroyed. What's the point of guarding your fleets at such a critical moment? They are just some intelligent robots. Could it be that they are more important than the lives of our demon race? Is it more important than the survival of our demon tribe? Now is the time. Do it now. Chanas roared the last sentence with all his might. The Devil Emperor Mo Wentian and the other members of the royal family of the demon tribe were stunned. Vaguely, they seemed to have guessed what Chanas meant. They looked at each other, feeling as if they had been struck by lightning. Nobody understood how Chanas had managed to manipulate Yarrow, the commander of the vanguard fleet of the Heavenly Fortune clan. Although Mo Wentian was a peak 9th rank Star Lord, what was lurking inside Chana's body had been possessed by a seed of life derived from the mechanical core. The crystal consciousness was so mysterious that not even a peak Star Lord could see through it. Chanas had done that only to gain a foothold in the 3 stars of the demonic emperor. He was certain that the mysterious guy would show up, but he wasn't sure when. Nothing could happen to the 3 stars of the demonic emperor before he arrived, and his identity as Chanas couldn't be erased. He also had to earn as many credits as possible, so that he could regain the trust of the demons and enter the core decision-making circle. That way, he would have a chance to approach the mysterious guy again after he arrived. Then, he would have to carry out his subsequent arrangements and plans. Hum. 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 Dense, feeble noises echoed from the 400,000 warships in the outer defense line, but it wasn't caused by the activation of the space oscillators. In fact, at this moment, the hundreds of fortresses that were originally in charge of fully activating the space oscillators and forming a chaotic void defense line in front of the outer defense line had all turned off their space oscillators at the same time. The noises came from the 10,000 warships, fortresses of the Heavenly Fortune clan. While Chanas was roaring, Yarrow had already given the order for all the warships of the Heaven's Legacy Race Vanguard fleet to activate their space jump ability and launch a suicide jump attack without exception. There was not a single member of the Heavenly Legacy clan in the tens of thousands of warships, fortresses. In the entire Vanguard fleet, only Sha Baofeng and Yi Luo were real members of the Heavenly Legacy clan. The others were all intelligent robots. Even if it was a suicidal jump attack order, they would carry it out without hesitation. All of this happened too quickly. The high-level commanders of the fleets in the Second Universe United Army Camp did not expect Yarrow to be so decisive. Before this, he had even activated the space oscillator to build a chaotic void defense line in front of the outer defense line. Such a move was to guard against the Second Universe's allied forces, who would launch a suicide jump attack. But now, in the blink of an eye, they had directly turned off the space oscillator, and more than 10,000 warships, fortresses, and even fortresses of different standards did not hesitate to perform space jumps at the same time. Boom! Rumble, boom! A huge roar sounded. In the blink of an eye, more than 1,000 fortresses and warships completed space jumps and appeared in the camp of the Second Universe's allied forces. They immediately self-destructed. This enormous allied force, which had more than 800,000 warships, immediately fell into chaos. In the area where the suicidal warships and fortresses landed, all the warships in the vicinity retreated as if they were avoiding ghosts. As the giant fireballs kept appearing one after another, the entire Second Universe's allied forces fell into chaos. Activate the space oscillator, Activate the space oscillator immediately. Stop these lunatics, we must stop them. Don't panic, we can't let the following suicidal warships complete the jump. Otherwise, more than 10,000 warships and fortresses will explode, and the entire Allied forces will be annihilated. This move was too ruthless and too sudden. The higher-ups of the various races in the fleet of the Second Universe were completely thrown into disarray. No one had expected Yi Luo to be so ruthless. Was this just giving his life to the demon race? He was practically protecting the demon race as if they were his father and grandfather. When did the positions of the Tianji race and the demon race switch? Who was the master and who was the servant? The demon race was just a servant race of the Heavenly Legacy clan. Yarrow was recognized as the second most talented person in the younger generation of the Heavenly Legacy clan. In the situation where the newly appointed young clan leader, Sha Baofeng, had betrayed the demon race, he was the most likely existence to become the next young clan leader of the Heavenly Legacy clan. It was necessary to protect the demon race. Regardless of everything, as huge fireballs rose in the huge allied forces of the Second Universe's allied forces, these thoughts immediately emerged in the minds of the high-level commanders of the allied forces. Even in the void thousands of miles behind the Demon Emperor 3 stars, the high-level commanders of the First Universe in the huge fleet were all dumbfounded at this time. They didn't understand how all this had happened in the end. In the chaotic allied forces of the Second Universe, hundreds of fortresses and fortresses of various sizes activated their space oscillators one after another, successfully constructing a chaotic void defense line in front of the long allied forces. Of the more than 10,000 battleships, fortresses, and fortresses of the Heavenly Legacy clan's vanguard fleet, less than 3,000 of them successfully completed the space jump, entered the enemy's camp, and then self-destructed. The other 7,000 battleships, because of the appearance of the chaotic void barrier, had their space jumps interrupted. They had no choice but to stop this shocking large-scale suicide jump and self-destruct. But even so, the first round of attacks launched by the 800,000 battleships of the Second Universe's allied forces was successfully controlled. The final result was that both sides suffered losses. The allied forces of the Second Universe lost tens of thousands of battleships of various types, and the 400,000 soldiers of the demon race's outer defense line in front of the Demon Emperor 3 stars also suffered heavy losses. The situation was still not optimistic because the other side was obviously enraged. This time, the allied forces of the Second Universe suffered a small loss only because they were successfully ambushed. After they reorganized and became angry, the upcoming second round of attacks would be even crazier and fiercer. Chapter 36-37. 3 war drums stretched across the void. The huge mouth of the drum with a diameter of 300,000 meters was facing the direction of the allied forces of the Second Universe, and behind them was the outer defense line of the 3 stars of the Demonic Emperor. From left to right, there was a gray void battle talisman, a gold time battle talisman, and a blood-red weeping soul battle talisman. This was Yi Xian's handiwork. After leaving the black hole of life, he rushed straight to the Demonic Emperor planet. Along the way, he even used his personal interstellar communication system to capture the signals of the star network in the void and inquire about the current situation of the First Universe. The disappearance of the signal of the first-level main network of the First Universe, which originated from Tianji City, shocked Yi Xian greatly. In his opinion, although the super death ray bomb that exploded in the Imperial prison was powerful, it was definitely not powerful enough to cause chaos in Tianji City to the point that it could not reach the star network that covered the entire first-level universe. The first-level main network was to the extent that the signal was cut off. Vaguely, Yi Xian felt that there must be something fishy about this. He originally wanted to secretly approach and see what the Tianji clan was up to, but then he learned about the crisis of the 3 stars of the Demonic Emperor. The Tianji clan's vanguard fleet led by Yi Luo had actually gotten involved with the demonic clan. Yi Xian could not understand this matter, but he had a comprehensive understanding of the consequences of this by capturing the weak signals of the second-level network from other races outside the demonic star region. In addition, the huge fleet of the allied forces of the Second Universe that had come from the demonic star region was pressing in. This time, something big was definitely going to happen to the 3 stars of the Demonic Emperor. In desperation, Yi Xian could only temporarily throw the doubts of the Tianji city to the back of his mind and rush to the Demonic Emperor planet with all his strength. At the same time that the Tianji clan's vanguard fleet launched a suicide jump attack, he arrived at this void battlefield. Seeing the Tianji clan's battleships, fortresses, and strongholds, under Yi Luo's orders, unhesitatingly launched a suicide jump, Yi Xian's doubts grew stronger and stronger. With his understanding of Yi Luo, unless this kid had lost his mind, he would never do such a thing that would harm himself. Here comes the matter. But now was not the time to delve into the suspicious points. Taking advantage of the fact that the huge coalition army of the Second Universe, which still had 800,000 battleships, was in chaos, Yi Xian felt that he could not miss this opportunity. The moment both sides temporarily ceased fire and prepared to reorganize themselves, he did not hesitate to rush into the void battlefield. With a wave of his hand, he summoned out the 3 battle talons that had just been forged and had already formed a fighting force. It was clear that they wanted to take advantage of the chaotic situation in the Second Universe to launch a destructive attack and completely defeat the enemy's huge vanguard fleet. At this moment, with the sudden appearance of these 3 huge warships, everyone who saw this scene, whether it was the Second Universe's coalition army in front of the battle line or the First Universe's slave fleet in the void behind the Demon Emperor 3 stars, without exception, all fell into a daze. After a moment of stagnation, cries of surprise rang out one after another like a tide. Spirit warrior? The demon's spiritual battle cry? Heavens, there are actually 3 at once. That's not right. What happened? According to our intelligence, doesn't the demon race only have one spiritual battle cry? And it has already been brought to Tianji City by Sha Baofeng. Why did they make 3 in the blink of an eye? This old man understands. Conspiracy. This is King conspiracy. Too bad. The demon race is too bad. They are simply prepared to face any danger. They have already dug a hole with the Tianji clan and are waiting for us to jump into it ourselves. Too shameless, too despicable. The demon race has indeed completely colluded with the Tianji clan. These 3 spiritual battle talons were definitely not made by the demon race. It is clear that the Tianji clan rushed to make them day and night, and specially sent them here from Tianji City by secret means. We have been fooled. This is a trap from the beginning. The retreat of the First Universe's slave clans and the chaos of the Tianji clan are all part of a conspiracy. Even Sha Baofeng's betrayal of the Tianji clan and the emptiness of the Tianji inner city's imperial prison is very likely to be part of their plan. It is for this moment. The 3 battle talons are across the void. The entire huge camp of our coalition army has already penetrated deep into the demon race star field. Even if we turn around and retreat, we won't be able to. It's time. This is the rhythm of a pot. That's right, it must be like this. Don't you see that there is an army of millions of slave clans in the void behind the Demon Emperor 3 stars? Bullsh *T Crusade, they are in cahoots with the demon race from the beginning. After the 3 battle talons are destroyed, they will rush forward together with the demon race's fleet. They are beating a dog in the water. Retreat. Retreat immediately, retreat at full speed. We have been fooled. As these exclamations sounded one after another, the long camp line of the Second Universe Alliance army was completely messed up. Nearly 800,000 battleships, fortresses of all kinds were in chaos again before they could break free from the chaos of the previous wave of jump-type suicide attacks. All of them were in chaos. They quickly retreated. In the void thousands of miles behind the Demon Emperor 3 stars, in the First Universe's slave clan subjugation coalition army, in the flagship of the slave fleet, the upper echelons of the various clans looked at each other, their minds in chaos. The exclamations from the Second Universe's coalition army made too much sense. Even they were stunned at this moment. Could it be? Was it really like this? Was the chaos in the Tianji city fake? Was Sha Baofeng's betrayal of the Tianji clan fake? The escape of the hostage members of the royal family of the various slave clans, so that the imperial prison of the Tianji inner city was completely empty. Was all of this fake? Was it just to set up this trap in front of them and completely wipe out the million-strong vanguard fleet from the Second Universe? These thoughts flashed through the minds of the high-level commanders of the slave clans. One after another, their minds were all in a mess. Even Mo Qigong, Grand Elder Mo, Demon Emperor Mo Wentian, and the others in the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor were stunned when they suddenly heard these words. Of course, what made them even more confused was, What the hell was going on with the 3 battle talons in the void of the central region of the front position? Demon Emperor Mo Wentian and Mo Qigong, and the others naturally recognized the void battle talon on the left. They had just finished remodeling it not long ago, and handed it to Prince Xian to bring to the Tianji city. It seemed that it had fallen into Prince Xian's hands again. But this wasn't right. If that was the case, where did the other 2 battle talons come from? Prince Xian was alone, so he couldn't build them at all. On the other hand, if the Tianji clan worked overtime in the outer industrial circles, it was more or less possible. Chapter 36-38. With the appearance of the 3 battle towers, the people of the entire void battleground were thrown into chaos. The allied forces of the second universe believed that this was all a conspiracy, and the purpose was to annihilate the entire allied forces in one fell swoop. But what made them angry was that they had really been fooled. They did not even suspect the big lie of Sha Baofeng, who had just received the young master's warning of betraying the clan. They were simply pigs. No, they were even worse than pigs. In the allied forces, the high-ranking commanders of the major clans of the second universe were so angry that they almost vomited blood. They were so regretful that their intestines turned green. The allied forces of the slave clans of the first universe were also filled with doubts. They also believed it and suspected that this was the plan of the demon race and the Tianji clan to keep the other clans in the dark. Many of the high-ranking members of the clans who really wanted to take this opportunity to rebel against the Tianji clan had already begun to feel nervous. They were worried that the Tianji clan had another intention, which was to use this opportunity to test the loyalty of the other slave clans. When they thought of this, they hated the demon-human race even more. They were all a slave race, but they actually dared to sit on top of their heads and act like tyrants with the Tianji race. They were here to bring disaster to their suffering brothers. This was really a misunderstanding that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. Even Yi Xian did not expect this, and he was already speechless. It was no wonder that these fellows thought this way. With the sudden appearance of the 3 battle drums, even the upper echelons of the demon royal family were stunned. They began to suspect that Yi Xian had sold them off, let alone anything else. Apart from the Tianji clan, it was basically impossible for any other clan to build another 2 battle towers in such a short time. This was the truth. If it wasn't for the fact that old man Wenxing knew the cause and effect of the entire matter, even he would be suspicious. But at this moment, although he wasn't like the others, suspecting that Yi Xian was colluding with the Heavenly Fate clan, he was once again shaken by Yi Xian's mysterious methods. He couldn't figure out how Yi Xian was able to create another 2 warships in such a short period of time. This was a colossus with a diameter of 300,000 meters. It wasn't something that could be created overnight. A sharp glint flashed across Chanasi's eyes, but it was quickly concealed. However, there was a faint trace of excitement on his face. The more mysterious the other party was, the more valuable they would be to him. His interest was growing more and more intense. Yi Xian didn't pay attention to all of this. If anyone wanted to misunderstand, then just let them misunderstand. It just so happened that he was able to maintain a bit of mystery. Even now, the celestial legacy race still had not revealed his true identity. This made Yi Xian very surprised and a little confused. He had no idea just what kind of medicine they were selling in their gourd. But no matter what, this was still good news. As long as the secret of his identity was not exposed, Yi Xian would have a lot less to worry about. As for the problem of the Heaven's legacy race secretly scheming against him, all he had to do was be a little more vigilant. Since they didn't reveal their identities, Yi Xian naturally couldn't expose himself. He had already returned to his original appearance, which was the appearance of Prince Xian that the outside world was familiar with. However, now that he was in charge of the Weeping Soul battle army, he didn't know which identity to use. Since he had to reveal his appearance, he might as well not come out. However, this matter could be considered later. However, the arrow in front of him was already on the bow, so he had no choice but to fire it immediately. Taking advantage of the fact that the allied forces of the various races of the second universe were still hurriedly and chaotically retreating millions of li away from the void, Yi Xian immediately gave the order to attack the Weeping Soul battle army. Although the combined attack of the 3 battle army would definitely be more powerful, this was the Demon Emperor star region. Yi Xian was really worried that he would directly create a super large black hole. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to explain himself to the demon race. Because of this, he didn't even dare to use the Void Battle Army. The Void Soldier Ladle race's unique biological wave frequency contained the power of the Void Law. The few void turbulence vortexes in the industrial circle around Tianji City were a good example. Yixian really didn't dare to randomly attack a random area. As for the Time Battle Army driven by tens of millions of golden slimes, it contained the power of the space-time law. In Yixian's opinion, its power should be the strongest of the three battle army. Naturally, it should be used last to decide the outcome of the battle in one blow. Thinking about it this way, the only one suitable to activate now was the Weeping Soul Battle Army that he personally guarded. Inside the Weeping Soul Battle Army, tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts and thousands of beehive nodes all began to move after Yixian activated the Weeping Soul Blood Crystal. In thousands of beehive nodes with a diameter of 3,000 meters, tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts fully activated the unique Weeping Soul spiritual wave of their race. This unique spiritual wave frequency energy converged from every beehive node and flowed along the special channels between the beehive nodes to the core node of the core circle, gathering into one. In the end, as the Weeping Soul blood crystal that floated in front of Yixian suddenly trembled, this terrifying and unique spiritual wave transformed into an incomparably sharp howl. It was like the roar of a sea of rage that instantly leaked out. Screech! The mournful Weeping Soul cry shrieked in the void. The entire vast and boundless star field trembled in the face of this sudden and violent howl that suddenly descended. This terrifying howl that was sharp enough to tear the sky apart instantly caused countless experts in the void to tremble violently. Even their minds and consciousnesses were in a daze at this moment, as if their spiritual bodies were being drawn by the howl and were about to leave their bodies. In the void in front of the Weeping Soul Battle Army, there was an invisible tide like the sea of stars that suddenly burst out from the core node. It flowed along the 9 outer layers of the battle army, continuously expanding until it finally turned into an invisible force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. In an instant, it directly faced the huge mouth of the battle army. The vast void was completely enveloped in an invisible shroud. There was no shocking scene of the void shattering inch by inch. There was no earth-shattering rumble of an explosion. There was also no turbulent whirlpool of the void like a black hole. There was only an indescribably mournful howl that reverberated in this corner of the void. There wasn't even an invisible shockwave. It was as if the full blow of the Weeping Soul Battle Army didn't have any substantial lethality at all. It couldn't shake everything in sight. Just hearing seemed to have suffered a great challenge. At this moment, all the experts in the three camps far and near in the void felt a little dazed. This was really the most perfect demonstration of the saying that the wind was loud but the rain was small. It was as if their eyes had dropped to the ground, rolling all over the void. But at this moment Yixian grinned. Just as the smile at the corner of his mouth slowly outlined, in the nearest battleships of the second universe in the void in front of him, there were suddenly extremely mournful but extremely short screams. Ah! Ah! One after another in half a breath. It was densely packed, and it resounded like an overwhelming sound. However, only the sound could be heard, and no abnormalities could be seen. All the battleships, fortresses that were shrouded by this Weeping Soul cry sound wave were still motionless in the void. Chapter 36-39. Ah! Ah! Numerous shrill howls resounded in space. Every single one of them was extremely short, yet they covered the heavens and the earth, and they densely covered the heavens and the earth without end. It caused a feeling of terror that caused one's back to go cold and one's scalp to tighten to instantly spread out and envelop this corner of the starry sky. This scene was too strange. The extreme contrast between visual and auditory gave people a completely unreal feeling. On the opposite side of the battlefield where the terrifying trumpet of the three huge warlords was facing, among the nearly 800,000 battleships of the second universe's various races, except for a small half of them that had already retreated, or before the Weeping Soul Warlord was activated and released this Weeping Soul Roar attack, they had already activated Space Jump. Outside the battleships that had the ability to jump far away, more than half of the battleships, fortresses of all sizes were still in the fan-shaped deep area directly in front of the 300,000-meter huge trumpet of the Weeping Soul Warlord. These miserable howls that made one's whole body feel cold came from these nearly 500,000 battleships, fortresses. However, the miserable howls resounded through the void, but these 500,000 battleships were still floating there unscathed. There was no abnormality at all. It was as if the earth-shattering mournful howl of the weeping soul warlord had no effect on them at all. This was unbelievable, but it happened to be the truth. The weeping soul warlord's weeping soul roar did not have any physical attack power. It was precisely because of this that its attack effect on the soul, spirit, consciousness, and other levels was even more shocking and horrifying. The weeping soul beast's weeping soul spiritual wave was not only effective against demons with spiritual power, but also against human cultivators who cultivated primordial spirit, as well as the consciousness level of other races or life forms, such as electronic consciousness, crystal consciousness, and so on. The shrill and harsh howl lasted only a few seconds, then it completely disappeared and could no longer be heard. Then, after another 2 or 3 seconds, as if in response to this mournful howl, countless miserable howls that appeared followed by this mournful howl also completely disappeared. The void returned to silence, a deathly silence. Everything before was like a dream. The mournful howl seemed to have never appeared, because everything in the void in front of them had not changed at all, making people suspect that they had auditory hallucinations. Right at this moment, an earth-shattering roar suddenly resounded through the void. Roar! Weeping soul roaring 10,000 seas emptiness. With just one howl, more than half of the living beings in the 500,000 battleships had perished. Who exactly are you? What kind of method is this? Ah! These words came from the mouth of a 15th realm expert. The mighty pressure of the universe was incomparably clear, but there was also an extremely strong sense of fear and shock in his words. Even his voice trembled. In the end, it was as if he could not control the trembling of his heart due to fear. It let out a shrill howl as if it was venting its anger. Then furious roars echoed one after another from the 500,000 warships, fortresses, and fortresses in the fan-shaped area covered by the enormous trumpet of the weeping soul war beast. Dead. He was already dead. How could this be? How could there be such a weapon of mass destruction? That's impossible. Heavens, what kind of black technology has the heavenly legacy race mastered to be able to create such a terrifying weapon of mass destruction? Is this still the power of science and technology? It's only effective on the mental consciousness level. It's targeted to crush this domain. Who can defend against it when caught off guard? It's too tragic. Too cruel. Everyone fell straight down. This scene is simply a nightmare. Who are you? Who are you? These furious roars basically all came from the mighty figures of the universe. There were also some who belonged to the 14th Great Realm, the Cosmic Light Realm, or the 13th Great Realm, the Genesis Realm. However, there was not a single existence below the 12th Great Realm, the Void Realm. It was as if the countless experts of the Second Universe in the nearly 500,000 warships, fortresses, except for a few existences above the 13th Great Realm, the Genesis Realm, had all died. Even the voices of the experts above the Genesis Realm, who were roaring, were filled with intense fear and weakness. It was obvious that even though they had withstood the Weeping Soul Battle LA's shrill howl that lasted no more than 10 seconds, they had not died. But in the end they had more or less suffered some injuries. This was a soul injury, a blow to the mental consciousness level. It was the most difficult to recover from. They needed to rest and nourish with targeted heaven and earth treasures before they could slowly recover. There were nearly 500,000 warships, fortresses, and fortresses of various types. Although there were only about 10,000 fortresses of various sizes, and about 100,000 fortresses of various sizes, the rest were all star-level warships that were 3,000 meters long. However, the total number of powerful beings from various races in the Second Universe that were stationed there was definitely an astronomical figure. According to the surviving experts of the Genesis Realm and above, most of the countless experts of the Second Universe in the nearly 500,000 battleships had died in less than 10 seconds. Furthermore, all of them were unharmed physically, but their souls had been annihilated. As this thought flashed through their minds, all the existences in the entire space battlefield, no matter which camp they were in, who knew what had happened, shuddered and subconsciously trembled, including Yi Xian himself. He had never imagined that the effect of the Weeping Soul Battle LA's Weeping Soul Battle La would be so terrifying. It was truly the sound of the Weeping Soul Battle La Cosmos. It was too frightening. This really has nothing to do with me. I didn't expect this attack to be so terrifying. Dumbfounded, Yi Xian muttered to himself. When he thought about how at least hundreds of millions of creatures of the second universe had died in his hands in just a few short breaths, he felt a strong sense of guilt. Fortunately, the nearly 500,000 warships on the other side were all from the various races of the second universe, and there was no human fleet mixed in. Otherwise, wouldn't this attack be equivalent to killing countless human compatriots? Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. It seemed that this Weeping Soul battle law could not be casually used in the future. Or rather, he had to go back and explore carefully to see if he could fine-tune the Weeping Soul Battle LA's Weeping Soul Battle Law in terms of power, range and so on. Control. In that case, only by using the Weeping Soul Battle Law could he avoid the situation where a large number of people would die in an instant when it was activated. The killing intent was too heavy. Chapter 3640. Out of the 40 million Weeping Soul beasts, nearly 100,000 of them had perished on the spot after that attack. Their spiritual bodies had directly dissipated. The casualty ratio was 2 in 1,000. It didn't sound like a lot, but it was definitely unbearable for Yi Xian. It had to be noted that the Weeping Soul beasts weren't like the golden slimes, who had a nest that could produce new members incessantly. They were basically like the Void Soldier ladles. Also, the Weeping Soul beasts were obviously more fragile and vulnerable than the Void Soldier ladles. The former was a crystal creature with a tough body, while the Weeping Soul beasts were like ghosts. They didn't have a physical body at all. They were just pure mental consciousnesses. They were spirits. They were sentient beings. After only one attack, almost 100,000 Weeping Soul beasts' bodies of consciousness were destroyed because of overexertion. All the other Weeping Soul beasts are exhausted. They won't be able to launch a second attack until they recover. The entire Weeping Soul beast population will have to rest for at least a few days before they recover. As he muttered to himself, Yi Xian's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. This time he finally realized where the greatest flaw of a starry sky killing weapon like Zhanla was. During the first battle between the vanguard fleets of the two camps at the frontier of the Demon Space Zone, the Star Lord of the Demons launched a powerful attack under the leadership of tens of millions of experts. Some of the experts who were guarding the beehive nodes were killed, but Yi Xian hadn't realized how horrifying the casualties were. Then, in the space zone of the Heavenly Fate City, some of the Void Soldier ladles that had been modified also died of exhaustion after the first attack. Yi Xian hadn't realized it back then either. But after the same problem happened twice, if it still didn't cause some kind of alarm and alertness when it appeared for the third time, then this kind of hindsight and sluggishness on the level of consciousness would really make one speechless. At this moment, Yi Xian was deeply aware of the importance of the controllability of the War Horn's power. Otherwise, every time it was activated, it would be an all-out attack that didn't care about the consequences. After a few more rounds, not to mention the Soldier Ladle or the Weeping Soul Beast race, even he himself would feel heartache. However, it wasn't the time to delve into the matter. The situation on the battlefield didn't allow Yi Xian to do so. While he was frowning and pondering, almost half of the 500,000 battleships, fortresses in the fan-shaped area where the Weeping Soul warship was facing had performed space jumps and escaped from the fan-shaped area covered by the enormous mouth of the Weeping Soul warship at their fastest speed. In the district, although most of the experts of the races of the second universe had perished, at least some of them, those above the 13th level of the Genesis, were still alive. They were the ones who had activated the space jump ability to move the warships to the enemy's camp. As for the other half, more than 200,000 battleships of various types, they were still floating in place, motionless. Obviously, all the elites of the second universe in these battleships had all died. Even if there were a few survivors, it was not enough to activate the space jumping ability of the battleships and control them quickly. An escape. At this time, in this half of the warships, there were a few experts rushing out of the warships, crossing the void with their bodies and escaping to the rear. More than 200,000 warships, which were seriously lacking in operators, could only be helplessly abandoned on the battlefield, like a ghost city. They emitted a strong aura of despair, floating in the void of the galaxy at this moment. A voice that was not loud, but its pressure was terrifying, sounded. It was like a soft voice, but it could be heard clearly in every corner of the boundless void of the battlefield. This kind of great killing weapon is too harmful to the harmony of the heavens. It must not be allowed to exist. No matter who you are, Either destroy it on the spot, or let this old man do it personally. Star-Lord Old Monster. The Star-Lord Old Monster was going to make a move. Previously, in the first battle between the vanguard fleets of the two camps at the front of the demon territory, tens of millions of demon powerhouses activated the Spirit War Kara and roared out 3 void turbulence vortexes in the void of the battlefield. 6 of the 20 supreme beings of the second universe fell. All of them were caught off guard and were sucked into the void. In the space turbulence vortexes, they were exiled, no different from dying. However, even at that time, the Star-Lord Old Monsters of the 9 great races, including the Blood-Flood Dragon clan, had never really made a move. Although there was a giant energy palm that came across the sky, they were scared away in the end and did not really fight to the death. At this moment, the Weeping Soul War Kara attacked with all its strength. Although no 15th Realm Supreme Beings of the universe were killed, the number of bottom-level powerhouses of the second universe who died because of this attack was too large, almost hundreds of millions. Under such circumstances, the Star-Lord Old Monsters of the 9 great races, including the Blood-Flood Dragon clan, finally could not sit still. It was impossible for them to sit still and do nothing. At this moment they spoke, their tone was cold and firm. It was obvious that they were determined to kill the Weeping Soul War Kara, and even the void of the battlefield ahead of them. The 3 War Karas in the air were all destroyed. Ruthless. Rumble. An earth-shattering roar resounded. From a major fortress of the enemy camp, a 7-colored light blasted out. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of the void battlefield. It shook its body and turned into a huge mottled python. The Star-Lord aura spreading out of its body seemed to be able to crush the void. As soon as it appeared, 2 scorching lights burst out of the colorful python's eyes. It turned into a ray of light and rushed over. However, after the 2 dreamlike rainbow-colored light beams shot out from the huge colorful python's eyes, their speed was extremely fast. There were even strange sizzling sounds coming from the void space. It was as if boiling oil had been splashed onto an ice field, and it was rapidly melting. Hiu! Hiu! They darted over at an extremely high speed and locked onto the Weeping Soul War Kara and the Time Kara. These 2 beautiful pillars of light were the bloodline abilities of the colored python race, named Furious Python Blazing Rainbow. Although they looked ordinary, they even had a kind of gorgeous, devilish beauty. However, their power and lethality were extremely terrifying. During the battle in the Heavenly Battlestar Zone of the Third Universe, the young heavenly talents of the Second Universe had rushed into the Shinon Cauldron. One of them was the little princess of the colored python clan, Medusa. At that time, a young genius from a top-tier family in the human race's science and technology camp was fighting fiercely. Unintentionally, he dashed to the front of the 2 7-colored light beams that were shot out by Medusa's Furious Boa Rainbow bloodline ability.